Okay, we'll start with non-agenda public testimony. As I call your name, please come up. We'll allow 2 minutes apiece. Do we have any other requests, Ms. Ward, other than on the blue sheet? Okay, so we'll allow 2 minutes each. Citizen, Ashley Beaver, Summer Boger, Francine Maxwell, Danielle Wiesel.
I want to speak to the 7 superintendent evaluations, and we're talking hours and hours and hours of private information. So at this point, when you've had 7 closed session evaluations, that needs to go to the public, and we need to know what you people are talking about that would take hours and hours and hours of reviewing what the superintendent has done. So some of the things that I've seen is that she has failed to clarify the bathroom policy. Little kids are being forced to suffer because their teacher tells them they can't use the bathroom. Why isn't there a policy that's being posted on the school website so parents are clear about what the rules are and that no child is denied going to the bathroom? After losing a lawsuit at $1.25 million for having a kid pee in a bucket because the teacher didn't believe her, you would think you'd have that policy in place. Corporal punishment, planking. She never addressed it. Little children were called liars by their principal and the teachers, and Cindy Martin stood by and let it happen. That really bothers me when adults say the children are lying. That's a horrible, horrible practice to have. Last year, she failed to appoint a permanent principal for Lincoln. The whole year. A media circus. Kids climbing on 10-foot fences demanding a principal. That's not asking too much for the superintendent to be able to appoint educational leaders to a school. The public records production issue. 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. Why isn't that being handled? You've got a serious, serious problem when you don't want to be transparent and you're telling people over and over again, we don't know where to find the information, we don't have the information, we're going to provide the information someday. This is a public entity, and we have a right to see how our taxpayer money is being spent. That issue needs to be fixed. Her evaluation,
Thank you.
F.
If I called your name, please come up. Kendra Cole, Clayton Ballard, Lorraine Burley, Anna Bonatati, Kent Hartman, and Jordan Williams.
Francine Maxwell, I'm going to start today with Luke 17:4. And if he sins against you 7 times in a day, and 7 times in a day returns to you saying, I repent, you shall forgive him. August 23rd through 25th, I called and left messages for the Faces Department. No return phone call. August 29th through 31st, called Faces Department. No phone call. The trustees have 1 employee. Have your employee mandate that customer service is to the Nordstrom standard. I have 15 parents ready to volunteer, and they cannot get through the process because we cannot get a return phone call from a department that didn't need to be created and could have been cut since we were in a budget crunch. I'm able to show you some of your staff members that have excellent customer service. Chief Marquez, you can call that man's office, and within 4 hours, someone is going to return your call to let you know that your issue will be addressed. That's Nordstrom's customer service. That's what San Diego Unified should make sure that permeates all of Normal Street, all of San Diego Unified. This is a brand new year, and we should be making sure that our parents, our guardians can get a return phone call so that they can get plugged into their cluster so that we can begin work of parent involvement, community engagement, and get our scores and get things turned around. Now, you guys know if I can't get a return phone call, And we know Francine gonna come up here every Tuesday to tell you, there's a problem for those unsung heroes of parents that won't come up here. Can you imagine the deterrent it is for them to want to volunteer? FACES is family and community engagement, but you can't get a return phone call. There's no A score for that department thus far. I understand it's the beginning of the year, but we were making phone calls before the year started. The first week of school, no return phone calls.
Could we make sure the superintendent checks into that? Thank you.
How you doing? Clayton Ballard, Lincoln High School. I want to share some positive things from Lincoln, just turn this narrative around. When I first got there in 2012, we had a very abysmal advanced studies program, no advanced English in 9th grade, 1 AP English Lit, 1 AP English Language, 1 Spanish language. It just didn't work. Now, today, with some work with our staff and with our feeder schools, we have an AP Calculus BC cohort now. 3 AP English Language, 4 Advanced English 9 classes, 2 AP Spanish Language, AP Spanish Lit. Things are improving at Lincoln. In 2012, for my arrival, there were only 48 students and a pass rate of 18%. Now we have 70 students and a pass rate of 35%. Now enter 6 counselors. With the 6 counselors, we experienced some very nice gains. In 2015, we had 50 referrals to our San Ysidro Youth Health Clinic. We improved on our youth in transition identification, which helped. We went from 8% to 17% identification to help those students to serve our population. And our retention rates are awesome. But the thing that we've been known for recently is our college. In 2015, with 4 counselors, 61% of our 61 students said, I'm going somewhere after high school. This last year, we had 154 students say, I'm going to go to some post-secondary institution. That's an increase of 152%. In 2015, 5% of our students went to a 4-year. Last year, 27% of our students matriculated to a 4-year school. We had an increase of 70% college acceptances. In 2012, we had 4 academic scholars to UCSD. Last year, you only heard of the 27, but we actually had 29 students receive academic full-ride scholarships. This can only happen, and I had the articles attached, it can only happen if we have a caseload of 250. Our neighbors to the south are using that A through G money to help out our students, and they are working on getting to that 250 level. It can only happen if we have 250 kids per counselor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Thank you.
Anna Bonatati. I'm here as a teacher, a parent, and an advocate for English learners. I have to say that this was one of the most chaotic school starts in my 20-plus years as an educator, much of it due to the numerous layoffs from last spring. My school started with 6 open positions and are finally now in the 3rd week filling those positions. I'm sharing with you the schedule of a former newcomer student of mine who reached out to me for help. You can see that of her 8 classes, 4 are unfilled, which means many students began school with subs. Mr. Beiser, Dr. Whitehurst-Payne, Superintendent Martin, as educators, you couldn't have forgotten how important it is that first week of school for establishing procedures and building community with students. It's very difficult to do that. We're now in our 3rd week, and still kids are moving around. I was not surprised by the spin the superintendent placed on the issue on the evening news by stating that credentialed teachers were in each classroom. That gave the public the false impression that all positions were filled, which we all know is not the case. And referring back to my former student's schedule, she was placed in a Spanish class when she's still at the beginning stages of learning English. She passed the load in her first language and speaks a 3rd language, and she had to fight and had to have me help her to advocate to get her out of the Spanish class, which they said was the only class they had room for her in. This is not a singular case, and it just disappoints me tremendously.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kendra Cole. I'm a parent of a Curie Elementary student as well as a Stanley Middle School student, and we're part of the UC cluster. And I'm really proud to say that our cluster is really organized when it comes to a music program that starts in the elementary school in the 4th and 5th grade, instrumental, all the way up through an award-winning middle school and just a phenomenal band in high school. And that only happens when there's a coordination between all the elementaries and also with the middle and high school. I came to you guys at the end of last year to ask that, we continue to fund the VAPA program to ensure that our kids are getting instrumental music in 4th and 5th grade. I was told we got the money, we were able to fund it. We started this school year, my 4th graders found out that there is no longer a 4th and 5th grade instrumental music program happening at Curie Elementary. Unfortunately, that has been taken away. We have a choral choir person, which is brand new for 5th graders only. This is going to be a disadvantage for our Curie Elementary students going into middle school. I don't believe that there is a beginner program for instrumental music at the middle school, and it's just going to take us back as a music program in our cluster altogether. I ask that we fund for 4th and 5th graders. It's not only, a great thing to have, but we know that this helps them developmentally. It helps them with their education. It helps them concentrate, collaboration. I believe it's to be a critical program, and we have other parents here who also believe that it's a critical program. So I ask that we, yes, fund it along with Doyle and Spreckles Elementary, because we go into one middle school, we go into one UC high school, and we'd be at a disadvantage as Curie students to going into those programs. So
Thank you.
please, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kent Hartman. I've taught high school math for 31 years, 10 of those at San Marino High School and 21 at the Bishop School in La Jolla. More than 1,000 of my students have passed AP Calculus exams. Over 500 of those have had scores of 5. Last spring, I volunteered extensively at Lincoln High School. The math faculty and the site administration are committed to and passionate about student achievement, and you've heard some of that from Mr. Ballard this evening. I'm committed to helping Vince Savanaroth help again with the Calculus AP preparation this year. I wish to join their team. I applied to work for the district in June. On August 10th, I was offered a one-year leave replacement, 1.0 full-time equivalent position at Lincoln. Excellent! I responded that day and was told to expect my paperwork shortly. Staff meetings were set to begin August 23rd. August 14th, no paperwork. I asked HR if I could pick up forms in person. August 16th, I was told they were busy and I would receive the forms soon. August 21st, having received nothing, I emailed another request. August 22nd, I was sent 2 PDFs, no personalization, to return as soon as possible. A TB test and fingerprint clearance were required before I could report to work. This would be the next day. Being a professional, I attended all staff meetings. This was an appropriate thing to do. Mr. Soto Ramos, who's been wonderful, was conducting the faculty and staff meetings the next morning. Thursday the 24th, Mr. Soto Ramos presented the department schedule. 12 of us present, 11 positions. Fine. I understand there was an error as far as communication. I deferred. There's another teacher there who was laid off, rehired, and I deferred because I'm at a different point in my career. 25th, I received a contract. Based on the information in your application, your tentative salary is Class 1, Step 1. Assuming an error, I went to HR later that afternoon. I was told no one in the building had the authority to change this. And I do hope you have a chance to look into that.
Thank you.
I am passionate about teaching at Lincoln. I do hope you can help me find a position there. There's a physics teacher who would love to teach physics. I would love to teach his mathematics classes. I hope you can arrange that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Burley. My information's on file, and I believe I'm the last non-agenda public comment speaker today. The first, I want to talk about some money that was approved in May of 2016 for this Scripps Ranch joint occupancy apartment project. You approved a agreement for doing environmental studies, and I'm aware that the contract's expired, but you might have a notice to proceed. The expiration date was September 1st. On July 2016, you approved bond money to be spent on projects that you saw fit. However, it includes the Scripps Mesa joint occupancy project. That is not excluded. So I'm very interested to know whether those tax dollars are going to be used, since the reimbursement contract doesn't cover the total cost for the environmental studies. The contract only stated 9 technical studies, but yet in the public CEQA scoping meeting, you showed 21 different technical studies, so you definitely are going to need more money. The total costs for the apartment project keep increasing, but the fiscal benefits keep decreasing. You know, this is a failed joint occupancy apartment project. It's off track, it's off course for any future success for this district, for the students, and for the community. There are charter school problems, there's environmental study problems, and there's legal costs. So right now, you arrived at a very opportune moment to not continue on with this ESA contract, to let the term sheet agreement expire, and start to work together and do outreach to engage the Scripps Ranch community. You got a letter from the Civic Association from Linda Vista for the Revere Center. It would be good if you could get one from Scripps Ranch as well. Let's create better solutions for land usage and taxpayer bond money. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this completes the non-agenda public testimony for this portion of the meeting. If we did not get to you in the first 30 minutes, we will also hear non-agenda public testimony at the end of the meeting. Thank you for all of your comments and for taking time to address the board and the superintendent today. We appreciate your input, and please know that your perspectives help us to better serve our students, parents, and the community. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone present today and those watching the broadcast and call the September 12th, 2017 regular meeting to order with all board members present. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. We've got the Navy JROTC Color Guard from Patrick Henry High School. We'll now present the colors.
Color guard. Hold. Left. Face. Present. Colors.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lower down. Colors. Ready. Cut. Right. Face. Forward. March. Left. Right. Left. Right. Left. Right. Left. Left. Right. Left. Right. Left.
Thank you, Patrick Henry High, JROTC. Okay, if you wish to address the board on any of the agenda items before the board today and your name is not on the speakers list presented on blue paper located at both entrances to the auditorium, and if you've not already submitted a request for public testimony form, please complete the form and submit it to Ms. Ward, our board action officer. Speakers on agenda items will be called on to speak during the discussion of the agenda item. Once discussion begins on an item, no additional public speaker requests will be accepted. Our bylaws provide that public testimony on agenda items is limited to a maximum of 20 minutes per consent and/or action item, allowing for a maximum of 10 minutes per opposing viewpoint. Public testimony speakers are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker, and depending upon the total number of speaker requests received, the time may be reduced to 2 or 1 minute each. The time limit for speakers on today's agenda items will be announced at each item. Okay, and now we will hear from our IB community on the presentation of the California Association of International Baccalaureate World Schools Legislative Champion of the Year Award. And we've got Principals Ernie Remillard, Amanda Hammond-Williams, Matthew Davis, the Treasurer of the California Association of IB World Schools. Please come forward to the podium.
Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Hammond-Williams, and these are some of my IB colleagues. Just some. There's more in the back. So I've been principal at Bernie since 2002, so I elected to be the one that spoke today because I've been in this IB journey for a long time. When we launched the IB journey, it was with a commitment to with some leftover money, and we didn't know if anyone was going to support us. And our goal to reverse the low-performing trend at Bernie began then. And thanks to Dr. Julie Martell, we were on the road to becoming an IB school in 2006. By the time we were authorized in 2009, Richard was one of our most committed supporters. And we believe that we proved that our direction was solid and promising. We're now one of the highest performing schools in our area, thanks to amazing teachers, parents, kids, and a promise that's called the IB Primary Years Program. I can't say enough about Richard's support for our flagship schools. He's sustained our schools through some of the worst budget years ever. He understands that IB is a successful, innovative academic program which sets a standard for the district to reach its goals. He's also seen his IB elementary schools become some of the highest performing schools in his area. So I am excited that we're going to present him with this award, and I'd like to introduce Matt Davis from CAUSE to do just that.
Thank you. I'm here tonight as a representative from the California Association of IB World Schools. Our mission is to serve as an advocate and resource to promote student success for IB programs throughout the state of California. This last year, we actually gave just over $49,000 in scholarships to teachers and students from our member schools. We also recognize those who are advocates and champions of IB programs. Miss Erin Knight, who's here tonight as well, PYP coordinator at McKinley and Jefferson Elementary, nominated Mr. Richard Barrera to receive this award tonight. She wrote that he appreciates how the IB program supports and complements his district vision. He is committed to creating educational opportunities that enable all children to reflect and take action to make positive differences in the world. She also quoted Mr. Barrera from an interview that he gave where he said, IB is as fine an education as you can get in any school in the country. And we agree with that. I am very excited to be able to present this award on behalf of the California Association of IB Schools, the Legislative Champion of the Year, to Mr. Richard Barrera.
Come on around. Don't hide yourself. Here we go. Yes. One more with this one. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. That was a real honor. Okay, can we get a motion to adopt today's agenda? Okay. All in favor? Okay, and on the superintendent's consent agenda, does any board member wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? I don't believe we have any speakers, do we? We do.
We do. You have speakers on items I-38, 40, 64, and 65.
38, 40, 64, and 65?
Correct.
Okay.
I'd like to move the superintendent's consent agenda, with the exception of 38, 40, 64, and 65, to be taken up at the end of the meeting.
Okay. We've got a second. All in favor? Okay. And Ms. Donovan, are there any closed session actions to report out on?
There are not.
Thank you. Superintendent Martin, do we have administrative assignments?
Thank you, President Barrera. These are administrative assignments that happened while the board was on recess in August, and we have not yet announced them at a public meeting, so I'll announce these positions that these individuals are actually already hard at work, but I want to announce them tonight. Vice Principal, Language Academy, Sylvia Herrera Flores. Vice Principal, Pacific Beach Middle School, Kyle Cooper. Vice Principal, Madison High School, Stacy Simpson. Vice Principal, Morse High School, Michelle Shin. Principal, Emerson Bandini, Juan Romo. Principal, Kimbrough Elementary, Hernan Beza. Interim Principal, Golden Hill K-8, Steve Elizondo. And Principal, Clark Middle School, Nicole Hendricks.
Thank you, Superintendent. Okay, at this time, we have our ASB student representative to the board. We've got Elena Zafala, our ASB president at San Diego High School. Elena, please tell us about what's going on at San Diego High and what's going on with you personally.
Members of the board and community members, my name is Elena Zavala, the current ASB president at San Diego High School. We at San Diego High School are exhilarated to have many of our teachers back whom have defeated and bypassed the layoff systems that created a scare at the end of last year. To start the school year off right, a freshman orientation welcomed the incoming freshman class that was expected to be around 400 students. Fortunately, this day was also the day that the solar eclipse took place. Therefore, we made sure to include fun and safe activities to view this unique opportunity. The idea of safe and fun activities leads to our Special Olympics program. This program allows for those with disabilities to interact in student life without much effort or complications. On campus, we care about the entire student body as a whole. To bring the students together, ASB provides school-wide activities such as dances, lunchtime music, activities, and pep rallies. Homecoming is our nearest event, which will be haunted themed to integrate the spooky vibes of October. As a student life is gratifying, so is the academic opportunities offered. To demonstrate, the IB Diploma program is unsurprisingly thriving to reach the expectation of the level of academics expected in college. To get an even closer experience with college courses, our neighbor City College offers courses such as Latino Studies, Political Science, and much more for our high school students. Now to the imperfections. As we know, not everything can go as planned, including weather, health, and goals. To give a helping hand to not only those attending San Diego High School, we host 3 blood drives each school year, with our first one upcoming September 26, providing blood for those in need as well as service hours for students. For a broader bird's-eye viewpoint of the problems occurring, ASB is collecting school supplies for impoverished students in the Philippines. This specific collection will actually be distributed by a former San Diego High School student, as she is helping and leading the children. For an issue closer to home, hurricanes are expected and occurring, and to prepare, we are gathering food and supplies to send out to support those affected. As already stated, we at San Diego High do not only care about our community as a whole, but off-campus also has our attention. I welcome the community to our biggest event of every school year, the homecoming game, taking place on October 20th at our Balboa Stadium. Thank you.
Thanks, Elena. Great job. Okay, board member information reports. Dr. Whitehurst-Payne. Oh, I'm sorry. Superintendent information report first, yeah.
Thank you, President Barrera. Well, thank you, and I want to welcome everybody back to our first full board meeting of the new school year. We have a full agenda tonight and a lot of work to get to this evening, but first, of course, yesterday was September 11th, so before we begin, I'd like to recognize our men and women from our school police services who are here with us this evening and extend to you a personal thank you to you and all first responders. Thank you for your service and for what you do. I'd also like to thank our amazing teachers, classified staff, and managers who helped to make the opening of this school year so smooth. As a 17-year classroom teacher, I know what preparation it takes to get ready for the first day of school, and our teachers and our staff did an exceptional job preparing for the first day of school. One of the reasons for such a smooth start to the school year was the 700 staff hired over the summer by our HR team. As a result, we were able to start the school year only with those vacancies created by personal decisions that were made by a staff member who chose to leave and our statutory deadlines that we're required to meet, mandated by the state. I want to recognize the resilience of our staff and our students that they showed in coping with the first week of school and the heat, the extreme heat that we had during the first week. As you know, this board took bold action 2 years ago to expand air conditioning across the district, and I'm proud of the progress our team has made since then by installing air conditioning today in over 2,000 of the hottest classrooms in the district, and we're continuing to expand it across the entire district. Speaking of our extraordinary staff and students, I'll be honored to attend one of the county's celebrations, Teacher of the Year, this weekend. I hope all of you will join us at the Salute to Excellence, Salute to Teaching this weekend. We have 3 exceptional teachers nominated for this honor, and we have an amazing student to recognize this evening, young Dimitri Merrim, a 3rd grader from Green Elementary. In case you haven't heard his story yet, he saved his mother's life over the summer. He did this with the CPR training that he received in our own schools at Green Elementary. We are extremely proud of Dimitri and the heroism and courage that he showed. His father described him as being fearless in a very challenging situation. We have examples of excellence across our district, and this week I'll be speaking on our work that we've done to expand academic excellence across the district through our work around equity. I'll be representing our collective work this Friday at the Ed Trust West Convening Conference on Equity, along with our Director of Secondary Schools, Cheryl Hiblin. That will be this Friday, a statewide convening around excellence and equity. This is a time to celebrate our success in advancing our equity agenda, in providing every student with what he or she needs, when they need it, and in the way they need it. This week, of course, if you haven't noted it on your calendar, is Mexican Independence, and I plan to celebrate with the students at Rosa Parks Elementary on Friday. But more than an official holiday, we also want to celebrate the success of our Mexican-born and other immigrant students. Our graduation rate for our English learners has risen dramatically in the past few years. Our immigrant students are making tremendous progress. Make no mistake, it's a reminder of what all students can achieve when we support them and believe in their dreams. That's why I want to conclude tonight by letting you know that a reminder went out today to all staff, a letter that was co-signed by many of our strong partners from organized labor, a letter to remind everyone of our support for our immigrant students, no matter what country they come from. The President's reversal on DACA does not change our commitment to maintain our schools as safe, welcoming environments. And as you know, we previously reminded all our parents of this commitment as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent. Now, Dr. Whitehurst-Payne.
I'd like to say welcome to all the parents, community members, to students, to the 2017-18 school year. And I'd like to say congratulations to the staff, students, and all of you for a school year that, following last year, I think some people had a lot of trepidations, but this year I went out and visited 16 of the schools the first week because I wanted the assurance that everything was okay. And in general, given where we ended last year, this year has been outstanding. And so I know it could not happen without students, parents, without staff members all contributing to a wonderful school year opening in that sense. I'd like to say that the HR staff did a tremendous job. I know people were expecting a lot of unstaffed classrooms and so forth, but we must commend our staff for what they've done to bring together where we ended last year. And I say thank you to you publicly. And my expectations are that this year we will move forward, we'll put the past behind us, we'll move forward and make this the best year that San Diego City Schools has ever had. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Whitehurst. Vice President Beiser.
Thank you, President Barrera. I'd like to echo the remarks of Dr. Whitehurst-Payne. I'm thrilled that because of the retirement incentive that we offered to employees, that so many folks took advantage of that. And currently we have 0 teachers in layoff status. 0 teachers in layoff status at this point in time. So I think that's phenomenal work of the staff, HR, and a result of strong collaboration between the bargaining units and the school district. So thank you very much for that. I too am excited about this next year. I think it's going to be our best year ever, especially in light of the fact that we tackled some very challenging budget issues at the last budget cycle, eliminating most of our structural deficit, making it easier for us to be fiscally solvent going forward. And so I think that that's going to pay dividends not only this budget cycle, but for the next couple of years as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. McQuarrie.
Thank you. Yeah, I too am excited about being back this year. Been able to reconnect with our schools and meet with our parents and our communities, and just want to state my objectives for this year. One, I want to expand the connections and the conversation that I've been having with schools and communities in my own sub-district. That's sub-district C. That's C for coastal. That would include La Jolla, Mission Bay, Point Loma, Kearney. One school in the Claremont cluster, which is Longfellow, and then one school in San Diego cluster, which is Washington. As well as connecting and expanding my connections and understanding with schools in the other clusters as well. So we have 16 major high school clusters. I have 6 that I work with, and I want to connect more with all 16. Secondly, I want to build our collective capacity and do networking, not only locally but statewide as well as internationally, so we can truly become quality schools in every neighborhood across the state and in the nation. I think if we want to be the best school district one of the best in the nation, we need to also be one of the best in the world, and my effort will be moving in that direction. So in terms of getting ready for this year, and already in the last 2 weeks, I've attended events and activities in the Point Loma cluster, the Kearney cluster, Mission Bay cluster, the Madison cluster, La Jolla cluster, and the Lincoln cluster, and the San Diego cluster, as well as Hoover. So making a connection and growing relationships and pulling communities together. One comment about the meeting I attended yesterday at the Lincoln cluster was a truly inspiring event with Sharon Whitehurst-Payne and Bruce Bevan and Roosevelt, who was the cluster chair. I thought I was at church. It was just so inspirational and so positive, and just an incredible amount of coming together of the community in terms of working vertically with all schools within the cluster. Very, very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Evans.
Okay, so District C stands for coastal. What does District A stand for?
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you. Just had to ask for a compliment. I'm also very excited about the new school year, but I imagine that some students had a little bit of difficulty waking up the first day or two of school, particularly high school students. And California is kind of in the limelight in the nation now because the state legislature is considering legislation to require that high schools and middle schools start no earlier than 8:30 in the morning. And that's gone to the Senate. The Assembly is considering it, I believe, and it will go to the governor's desk. And we'll see what happens on the state level, but whether or not it happens at the state level, it's certainly an issue that we need to address. It's really a public health issue. It's been addressed by the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Psychological Association, the Centers for Disease Control. It really has to do with relating student achievement to students being awake at school. Now, some people would say, well, the students just need to go to bed earlier, but we know that in adolescent development and the circadian rhythm that they do not fall asleep as early in the evening, and this is depriving a lot of our students of sleep. So it's something that's on our radar right now. We don't know exactly what's going to happen at the state level, but I have a couple of clusters I've been working with that are also very interested in this topic in terms of really improving student achievement, student safety, and a lot of other factors by having the students awake when they arrive at school in the morning. So we'll see what happens.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. And I very much appreciate Superintendent's remarks. As we know, a group of students in our district were once again thrown into anxiety last week with the President's executive order on the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. These are kids who came to this country as kids and have done nothing other than throw themselves into contributing to their classrooms, contributing to their schools, contributing to our community and to our country, and they want what every other student in our district wants, which is a bargain that if they work hard and do their job and make a contribution, that the doors of opportunity are going to be opened up, and they're going to be able to go to college and go to work and contribute to this country as the great Americans that they are. Our district has been supportive of students who've applied for the DACA program since its inception. We've facilitated DACA applications, and now we stand ready to support our students in every way, including our Office of Family and Community Engagement has access to a number of community resources. So if students and families are looking for support, please get in touch with our Office of Family and Community Engagement. We've got an entire community that's rallying behind our students, that believes in our students. We're going to fight this on every level. I'm proud to see the Attorney General of California and the President of the University of California have already filed suit to maintain the DACA program. We'll pursue our legal options to be supportive of those lawsuits as well. So it's, once again, there's a need for all of us to pull together to support the students in our community, because they've certainly done everything that they can to contribute to all of us. So I appreciate the remarks, Superintendent Martin. Okay, now we have our item E1, our Vision 2020 LCAP presentation, and this is our first ever Quality Schools in Every Neighborhood Awards. Superintendent.
Thank you. I can't think of a better way to start the school year than to focus on our core mission, which lives inside of our LCAP and our Vision 2020 goals. And quality schools in every neighborhood is something that we are recognizing specifically through these awards tonight. So we want to talk specifically about some of our schools that have lived up to each of the LCAP goals that we focus all of our work on. So tonight, this item actually was originally, the first time I heard about it was from Trustee Evans over a year ago, and then there was a collective conversation by the board about this. Quality Schools in Every Neighborhood's having an award that is directly related to our vision of offering quality schools, and it represents goals 1 through 5, specifically in our LCAP, and you can see the posters hanging in here. We use these to guide all of our decision making. I announced in my 2016 State of the District address that we would be using these awards to lift up and recognize what it actually looks like to deliver on these goals, and the unique individual characteristics of each of our schools that shows how we can offer our students the best possible education right in their own community. So during the 16-17 school year, we piloted this program to recognize the schools that are exemplifying and implementing Vision 2020 and the LCAP goals, to highlight schools that are uniting our city by delivering on the district's commitment to a quality school no matter where you live in our city. Area superintendents in this process identified 13 schools, and we asked the principals of those schools to help us develop a process this past year, for recognizing and honoring the innovation and the ongoing work that defines their quality school. Site visits were conducted in which the principals shared with the instructional team how exactly they're exemplifying the LCAP goal for which they're being considered. We got into the details of how are you doing this? What are the specific details of implementation and the reason why you're being recognized? Principals were then asked to share any materials that they had related to their site's work on that specific goal. And then they shared with us their thoughts on how other sites could replicate their success. When we see something working in one part of the district at one school, we want to lift it up, describe it, replicate it, and take it to scale. And we ask the people on the ground, how did you get this recognition? What are the things that you do? And what are some best practices that can be replicated across the district? And then we talked about what criteria could be used in recognizing the specific goal in the future. So last year was a launch year in particular. We started to identify and put language around this. So 5 of the 13 schools, 13 we represented last year, 5 of you came and presented the information to the Board of Education at our June 6th LCAP workshop. And I want to show a little video montage, and I want to say thank you to those 5 principals who came out and presented to the board. We'll talk about all 13 of you tonight, but let's look at a little video of the LCAP workshop on June 6th, because this was the first presentation we had of 5 of the 13 schools we recognized last year.
Meaning that we had to strategically put them in partnerships that will allow them to have more opportunities to speak.
Turn up the volume,
as well
please.
as allow that when partners leave to get their service hours, they still have partners there for other students to talk with.
Educator, that I believe that all students can rise to the level of our expectation, and that all means all, and we should never, ever look at students through the deficit perspective.
We are creating opportunities for our students to think and to be really creative and be problem solvers and developing their leadership skills. We're focusing on equity. We've had amazing opportunities to go to the National Equity Program.
Could someone turn up the volume,
we've
please?
learned a lot from going to those sessions. And so we've been at Rosa Parks. We are of the belief that part of our job is to make college possible, and that we want to ensure that every child has the first step education so that they can be highly successful and they go on.
Thank you. So the awards we are presenting today are to recognize all 13 schools and their commitment to excellence, and we thank them for serving as models for replication of some of the finest work on how to successfully incorporate Vision 2020 and the LCAP goals into our school communities. So we're going to call up the schools to receive the rewards. I think Richard might have their awards or their certificates, or they're over there, okay. So LCAP Goal 1 is closing the achievement gap with high expectations for all. We'd like to recognize Chesterton Elementary and Lewis Middle School, please. And you all can stay up there while I finish calling them, and then we'll do one group picture. For LCAP Goal 2, access to a broad and challenging curriculum, we recognize 3 schools: Valencia Park Elementary, Innovation Middle, and San Diego High School of International Studies. Please come forward. And for LCAP Goal 3, quality leadership, teaching and learning, 4 schools: Choyas Mead Elementary, La Jolla Elementary, Sessions Elementary, and Marshall Middle School. Please come up. And our LCAP Goal 4, positive school environment, climate, and culture, we are recognizing 3 schools: Crown Point Junior Music Academy, Fulton K-8, and Stanley Middle School. And finally, for LCAP Goal 5, family and community engagement, recognizing Rosa Parks Elementary School. This year at our annual State of the District address, I will be presenting more information about how more schools can self-nominate for the 17-18 CUSIN Awards. CUSIN meaning Quality Schools in Every Neighborhood. That's our nickname. So we'll pause for a picture here. Thank you, everybody, for being a fine example.
So the picture's gonna happen over this way. Oh.
Okay, I guess so.
Please, if you know you're short, be in the front. Okay, So. That includes the school board if you're short. You have to come down if you're short. Okay, so if you're looking at somebody's head, you know you're not in the picture. So Miss Whitehouse-Payne, could you please come on down? Yeah, you looking at a head all day. Okay, so let me get this one so I know I get everybody. Okay, so we need, you almost there. It's some empty spots on them stairs, something ain't right. Come on, yeah. If there's some empty, scoot over some. Okay, right there. Don't move no more, because then you come and hug. Okay, come on over, baby. Right there. There we go. So I got everybody. Right here. One more. Come on. Okay, say one more.
Gabby, come on.
Is there somebody else?
Yes.
You mean to tell me? Okay. You did good too. Fit right in there. Here we go. Thank you. Now, if you want a picture by yourself with your award, when we leave out the door, I'll be standing there, excuse me, baby. Or with your little group, or...
That is really exciting. Thank you, schools. We've got two speakers on this item, Lorraine Burley and Francine Maxwell. You have 3 minutes apiece.
I just wanted to take a minute. My name is Lorraine Burley, and my information is on file. I just want to thank Michelle Irwin for her outstanding work at Marshall Middle School. I've known her for about 15 years. 3 of my children went through Marshall Middle School. Her outstanding leadership creates a model teaching and learning environment for our students. The community, parents, and all students greatly benefit from Michelle's excellent work. So thank you, Michelle. I know we're sometimes a pain, but we do appreciate you greatly. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you.
I wanted to say congratulations to all, especially those schools that were in District E. But I also like for the board trustees, as we're thinking about awards, that we begin to strategize about some out-of-the-box thinking, some innovation things. Dr. Mike was at the cluster meeting last night, and I want to thank you. Dr. Sharon Whitehurst-Payne shows up every month to all her cluster meetings. And there was something that was very monumental, because they got to experience 2 parents of African-American descent and Latino descent tell them that their children can't read. And so you couldn't go away from that the same way that you walked in the door. So what I'm asking is that the board trustees consider having an all-call meeting where we have every student in San Diego Unified, every parent, every community member, every guardian, we meet somewhere centralized, and let these parents tell you what it feels like, because we're student first. San Diego Unified, we put students first. You need to let somebody re-energize you for these jobs when they can look you in your eye and tell you, my baby in the 8th grade has all A's and they can't read. I take them to the grocery store and they can't read. Today, I was blessed to walk in the door and a Latino girl who lives in City Heights, whose mother has some issues with immigration, so she doesn't come out the house that that much. She was pushed out of Scripps Ranch because of her grades. She was failing. She said, I admit it, nothing but F's at Scripps Ranch. I'm at a charter school. I've regrouped myself. I'm making all A's. I want to come back to Scripps Ranch. It may not be possible for her to come back to Scripps Ranch because her grade level may be full. But we don't want to take that child's spark away from her because of the hard work that she did at the charter school. But somebody on the diocese needs to look her and her mother in the eye and feel her pain. Yes, she made a mistake. She's a child. She's supposed to make a mistake. But we're there to catch her. And so this is the spark that San Diego Unified needs. I need everybody to go to closed session, have a conversation. Let's get back to boots on the ground and what it's about, which is children first. There's a child, I think the woman said her child is in middle school, Latino boy, and he can't read a lick. But she said, I sit at home and I see him constantly getting A's, and I just don't understand. So we need to have real conversations in real time with real parents and real guardians in a not trepidatious area. So maybe we all meet somewhere in a park and we set up the tents and we set up tables so that we can tell them these are the resources in every cluster that can help that child. If we're going to be student first, we need to start doing some things that cause people to come out of their comfort zone, come out of their offices, and really get to the heart of what's driving this. We are doing social promotion. We got away from it. We didn't call it that anymore. But last night, Dr. Mike, Dr. Sharon Whitehurst Payne, they got to witness what's really going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can we get a motion to adopt the board consent agenda items F1 through F4?
Second.
Please vote. Okay, item G1 is our Audit and Finance Committee semi-annual report to the board. And I think Dr. McQuarrie, are you introducing this item? Oh, you're doing the report, all right.
So, yeah, I don't believe Dan McAllister is here.
Okay.
And at his request, I was asked to deliver the report. Dan McAllister is the chair of the Audit and Finance, and he was unable to be here tonight. And because this
Good evening. I'm sorry I didn't get introduced. The vice chairman did get to show up at least. As the vice chairman of the Audit and Finance Committee, I deferred to Dr. Mike and Dr. Sharon to read the letter, but unfortunately I have to catch a flight. So that's one of the things that I did wanted to give an update, though, in the process of saying that we did select a company in going forward to provide more audit and finance information, and that will be provided at the next meeting. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to give that update, because I was selected upon the committee to go and do the search. And we have selected. So you will see a new and improved process with the company that we have selected. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to give that vote of encouragement, and also the update to the process that Dr. Mike, that you will continue reading the final part of the letter. But thank you very much, Superintendent Martin and the rest of the board, for your continued support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. So the committee is made up of 5 members, and all of us on this board have been on the committee from time to time representing the board. So 2 of those 5 members are board, 3 are community members, and those community members are required to have backgrounds in audit, finance, and business. And we're very fortunate to have Mr. Dan McAllister as our chair, and I think he's been there since the late 90s. And he is also treasurer of the county chair, and very, very knowledgeable, runs an excellent committee, and keeps us on task. And then we also have, along with Patrick Ambrose and Colleen Harvey, we have a full committee. In Dan's report, he acknowledges the work that our internal auditor has done and the importance of that job. The internal auditor takes a look at ongoing practices, the day-to-day operations, and it's due to the excellent work of an internal auditor that we have the outstanding external audits that we get every year. Because of the importance of the committee, it was decided 2 years ago to do a semi-annual report to focus on the internal audit, which is what we usually do in July. It was delayed until today, and this is why we want to provide this report. The external audit report is due. It comes around in January. And we received outstanding reports from our external auditor, and we have the highest ratings possible. And these high ratings come about because of the internal auditing practices that we've put in place. We're currently, as Patrick has suggested, taking a look at, we've restructured the internal audit process, but it still has the same high priority, and we're looking at risk management, taking a look at the priorities of areas that need to be looked at, as well as looking at protocols. So the audit report, which is in your agenda, there were 14 internal audits submitted, and they come with recommendations, and you can look at those, and they cover areas ranging from the associated student body counts, known as ASB, at our individual schools, internal controls and labor costs, and the use of district purchase cards, cash receipts, disbursements of ASB funds at 10 of our elementary schools. It also includes a list of reports, the number of recommendations for improvement, the costs that were questioned as to whether they were appropriate for the specific program or did not have sufficient documentation to support the cost incurred, in the funds that were identified, and the auditors that could have been, and the corrections that could have been put in place. So what we've been able to do with our internal audit process is to reduce the number, the frequency, and the high cost audit. So it's been an excellent process. You've got the report, and I don't know if Dr. Whitehurst-Payne, you want to add anything to the report?
No. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McQuarrie. Well, we've got one speaker, citizen. You have 3 minutes.
One of the poorest decisions by Martin this past year was to eliminate the internal auditor, one of the most important positions in helping provide oversight of how taxpayer money is spent. Instead, Martin kept Carmina Dud Diploma Duran, the quality assurance director. That's what should have been eliminated. Martin's priority was not fiscal scrutiny and transparency of how money is spent. Instead, she went with nepotism, keeping her friend instead of keeping our internal auditor. VIBA costs, fraud, overpayments, credit card fraud, ASB issues. These are all issues that the internal auditor has been overseeing for at least 30 years that I can think back. And this new process is not going to be independent. It's not going to be accessible. It's certainly not going to come up to the level of the professional person that we had. And it's interesting that Dr. McQuarrie states that the audit committee is required to have a financial background, but that's not required for people that work in budget. You don't need a degree in finance, budgeting, accounting to work in budget. And that's why we needed an internal auditor. And her decision to eliminate that internal auditor is going to result in a lot of money that's going to slip through taxpayers' fingers because we don't have the appropriate oversight. The decision that was made when it separated from the County of San Diego, the Office of Education, was to put that in there as a very important balance and check on taxpayers' money. And Martin eliminated it. Can't understand that reasoning at all. She had other choices to cut, and she kept a superfluous department that's receiving lots of complaints. I can't tell you how many complaints I get about the Quality Assurance Office. You should have a column for the complaints about the Quality Assurance Office. But you didn't get those complaints about internal auditor. Instead, they went to the audit committee, they made regular reports. The public was fully apprised of what was happening with the audits within the school district, and we've lost that. and it's a big loss to the taxpayers of the county. And John Lee Evans and Richard Barrera and Kevin Beiser and Sharon Whitehurst Payne and Michael McQuarrie are responsible for watching that go away because they don't have any oversight over their superintendent that was appointed with no background. She has no background, but she knows how to eliminate the people that can watch her.
Okay, Superintendent, do you have any last comments on this item?
No, thank you for the report.
Great, thank you, Dr. McQuarrie, for the report.
I just want to correct the record. We still have an internal audit process. We have 2 internal audits. It's not been removed. We feel that we can move forward, maintain the quality, and provide oversight. We think we'll have a process in place that will continue the excellent work. We'll continue to get the excellent outcomes, both from our internal auditors checking the day-to-day operations, as well as our external audits, which have been probably as high as you can possibly get with any public education system.
Thank you for setting the record straight. Vice President Beiser.
Thank you, President Barrera. So what I hear you saying, Dr. McQuarrie, is that we will continue to have internal audit mechanisms in place, and we will continue to have external auditors from outside our organization looking at how we're conducting business. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Dr. Whitehurst Payne.
I think it's important to note that it will be on 2 levels. We'll continue with our external auditors, and I thought that report was due in December. But then we also will have auditors who will be looking at internal matters also, subject specific. And the whole issue of ASB is because we have children involved, we have students involved, we have clerks at all sites, and they're doing various activities. There's the issue of ongoing training. So we're trying to build in some training so that folks know that when they come in, not only the adults, but the children, even at high school. And ASB at high school levels, if you're listening to me now, you need to have your children go through some training also so that you can help monitor what's going on with the ASB funds.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can we get a motion on item G2, revision to the board composition of the San Diego Global Vision Academy?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, please vote. Okay, and we are on to item G3. This is our public hearing to consider support for the renewal of the Charter School of San Diego, and I think there are a few people who've got an interest in this item who are here tonight. All right. All right. Okay, Superintendent, please present the item.
Thank you. As you said, this is the initial informational public hearing, the first read, and it's renewal of Charter School of San Diego with all the supporting documents that have been submitted to the board, including that big giant binder right there.
Yes.
And Ms. Walsh, will you have some opening comments?
Thank you. So item G3 is the public hearing to consider the level of support for renewal of the charter petition for Charter School of San Diego. Charter School of San Diego is seeking renewal of its charter for a 5-year term, beginning July 1, 2018, and ending June 30, 2023. The school currently operates a non-classroom-based independent study program for students in grades 7 through 12. As part of this renewal, they are requesting to expand grade levels to include grades 6 through 12. They're doing that because the charter for Laurel Preparatory Academy will not be renewed when it expires at the end of this school year. So essentially, they are combining the 2 schools. We've included some overview and information for both schools, including enrollment and academic data. There's some projected enrollment charts. We also note that there are actually 3 different schools authorized by San Diego Unified School District but operated by the same organization. And over the past 2 years, we've seen those schools transition their out-of-district sites to be within San Diego Unified District boundaries and into compliance with Charter School Act. We have noted in here all of the administrative and resource centers that Charter School San Diego currently has. We've also included some board roster information, and district staff is currently reviewing the charter renewal documents and will bring a recommendation at a subsequent date to grant or deny the charter.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh. We've got some public speakers. We've got several, so we're going to limit it to a minute apiece. So as I call your name, please come up. Tim Tudor, Daniel Macareg, Felicia Stevens, Michael Hanna, Sebastian Rodriguez Dominguez, Saitupu Sagyao, Tracy McNeil, and Jeanette Perez.
All right, good evening, President Barrera, Superintendent Martin, members of the board. My name is Tim Tudor, Executive Director for the Charter School of San Diego. It's an honor and a privilege to be here today to support our charter renewal petition. As part of this process, you're here to gauge the level of support for this charter petition. So I would like to ask everyone that's here to support this renewal petition to stand up and show the board the support we have for this school. They were very stealth-like coming in during the meeting so we would not disrupt. So I really appreciate that, and we worked with the school police for that to happen. We also, for those folks that were not here today, we have 3 boxes of cards signed in support of the school. So we have some students who'd like to present those. I think we can drop those off with Ms. Ward here if that's okay. Thank you for that, just to show the support for the school. As you know, Charter School San Diego was the first charter authorized by this district, the first one in the county. We've spent the last 24 years as a charter school working to support kids that want a more personalized environment. Prior to that was a district dropout recovery program as well. Just a few highlights about a current charter term. I apologize if I could have 1 second. We just received in June our 4th consecutive 6-year term of accreditation. It was a 6-year clear, which is the highest form of accreditation you receive. We're one of the top performing ASAM schools in the state, which is a state designation for high-risk students. And also, as many of you know, back in 2015, the Obama administration awarded this school the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award for Performance Excellence, the highest award you can receive from the Office of President for Quality. We've got a number of students, parents, and staff here that want to speak to you, so I'll turn it over to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Macareg, and I am currently a senior attending the Charter School of San Diego. During my time at CSSD, I've seen the many benefits this school offers the students. My peers have enrolled at CSSD for a variety of reasons. Some students may have fallen behind in their previous schools and are working to catch up to graduate on time. Others attend this school because it gives them the flexibility they need to take care of their family. But for me, it has given me the opportunity to focus on college applications and to graduate. The Charter School of San Diego has helped thousands of students complete their high school education, which is an important step towards pursuing their own careers and personal goals. I respectfully ask that you renew the CSSD charter petition so that I can continue to help students like me reach their highest potential. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Good evening, distinguished members of the San Diego Unified School Board. My name is Sebastian Rodriguez. I am in 12th grade and I am currently attending the Charter School of San Diego. I'm representing the students currently enrolled and future students by asking the board on our behalf to please renew the charter for the school. I now enjoy waking up and actually going to school because I've given the opportunity to continue studying for my high school diploma. The small resource center ensures that I feel welcomed and safe. I now have enthusiasm to get my work done because I have a personalized education plan. What this means is I take one course at a time, I choose the order of the classes I want to take, and I take the classes I need for graduation. I can customize my school hours as well so I can focus on other things like work, volunteering, babysitting, or internships. I have enough support from teachers and peers that it's actually hard to fall behind. The courses can be taken online, blended online, or from a textbook, and teachers also offer individual tutoring if needed. Lastly, this school offers a senior pathway, exhibition, and individual college or career counseling, so this means I will graduate with a plan for life after high school. Please consider this request to renew the charter. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian.
Hello, my name is Valencia. I'm a 2017 graduate of the Charter School of San Diego. When I was at a traditional public school, I couldn't focus and my grades started to suffer. That's when I started to hang around with the wrong people and I knew I needed a change. I yet again tried another traditional school, but my family and I lived far away and I was chronically late to school. My grades again started to fail. That's when I found the Charter School of San Diego, which I love it. It meets my needs and provides a better environment for me. Thanks to the flexible schedule, I was able to work independently and catch up. I also had access to fantastic teachers who really helped me meet my goals and find success. I am thrilled to share that I am finally have found success in attending Cuyahoga College and majoring in social work. Please renew CSSD charter. It helps thousands of students to become successful.
Thank you.
So good evening. My name is Michael Hanna. I'm the Commandant of Cadets for our Cadet Corps program. It's an applied leadership and character development program. Every June, I'm honored to witness our graduating cadets walk across the stage and receive their diplomas. Just this past June, our valedictorian speech was delivered by a cadet who started the program as a shy, apprehensive student that quickly grew into an influential leader at the local and state level. Little did she know that her participation in the program would lead her to receive first place in the state-level overall cadet competition, the highest competitive award the Cadet Corps program has to offer. She's not the only successful cadet we have. Since 2014, we have consistently placed top 3 in academic, physical fitness, CERT, and drill and ceremony state-level competitions. In short, our cadets are just an example of how we transform lives and allow students to grow to their maximum potential. Please approve our renewal and allow us to continue servicing these extraordinary students. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tracy McNeil. I'm a parent of a CSSD student. My daughter enrolled because she was unable to handle traditional school format, i.e. 7 different teachers, 7 different subjects, and 7 different classrooms. CSSD helped immediately and immensely with its format of 1 teacher for all subjects in 1 resource center with a small group of fellow students pursuing their schoolwork at their own pace. CSSD was especially helpful after our family faced the cancer and subsequent death of her father. She was able to take the time needed to stay involved with her education without becoming too overwhelmed, again, due to the one-on-one teacher-student format. My daughter is currently on track to graduate in May. This is something I had not dared hope for when she was in traditional high school. Please renew the CSSD charter petition. The school really makes a difference for the students.
Good evening. My name is Jeanette Perez, and I'm starting my 24th year at the Charter School of San Diego. I have been here since the beginning. During this time, I have seen firsthand the opportunities this school offers students so that they can be successful, productive citizens. During the 2016-17 school year, many of my students became the first to graduate in their families. This has been the case for hundreds of my students. Another student who was homeless much of her life earned her high school diploma. Unfortunately, this type of situation is not outside the norm of our student population. One of the best things about CSSD is the design of our program. The resources and special training provided allows us to meet our students' needs and move them forward. In March, I was honored to receive the 2017 Heart Vision Award for California Charter Teacher of the Year in recognition of the great work we do at CSSD. Please renew the Charter School of San Diego's charter petition so that we can continue to transform lives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Saitupu El Sangiao, and I'm a 2017 graduate of the Charter School of San Diego. I attended the charter school beginning in the 6th grade due to the fact that my mom wanted me to go to a smaller and safer school. But the Charter School of San Diego not only gave me safe, encouraging places to learn and grow, it also gave me the opportunity to gain leadership skills. I participated in the California Cadet Corps, where I was able to push myself outside of my comfort zone and grow as a leader. I competed in a statewide academic competition and won first place, the highest competitive award in the California Cadet Corps. I was also chosen as the graduation speaker for the class of 2017. Without the Charter School of San Diego, my accomplishments wouldn't have been possible. The teachers understand that not all the children learn the same way or go through the same struggles. Please renew the Charter School of San Diego charter so that the students who need something different or another chance can be successful. Thank you.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Do we have any questions or comments from board members? Yeah, Dr. McQuarrie.
I'm excited to see the renewal of this charter coming forward. This is the oldest and the longest charter that we have here in San Diego. It was founded in 92, 93, I believe. They were founded for the reasons that charter schools in California were put together. That was to create alternatives and options for parents, for schools to do innovative and explore new practices in order to create the new ideas that the district could pick up and then put into place. For example, the idea that was put together here is the virtual learning, the blended learning that combines computer text, online learning with individual and teacher supervision, and that idea that has developed so well with San Diego Charter has been picked up by us and implemented in our iHigh, as well as what we're now doing at every high school in San Diego. In addition, what wasn't mentioned was the national award that the charter school received. So the San Diego Charter received the National Malcolm Baldwin Quality Award for excellence, and I was fortunate to be able to attend that celebration. They were the first and only school and only charter ever to receive this national award for excellence, and it was quite an honor. So I understand that if I read the request correctly, that Laurel Prep will be merged into the San Diego Charter?
Correct.
And then I'm also looking at the numbers, and I'm wondering what accommodations are being made for that. There's been a drop in the California, the charter school from last 2015, 16, 2,262 to 1,892. And when you combine the two enrollments, it doesn't quite come up to that. I'm wondering what's the mitigation for the loss of enrollment?
Okay, so as I had mentioned earlier, the schools have actively worked at transitioning some of their out-of-district sites to be compliant in district. Part of that process also involved transitioning or going to local districts seeking authorization for some of their other programs. And so I think the combination of that, having for instance, the Carlsbad site is now authorized by a different authorizer. So I think there's been some shifts in the enrollment patterns, but they have included in this their projection for the next 4 years.
So you're confident that we'll be able to fund a budget that will...
Pardon me?
You're confident they'll be able to fund a budget and a program and continue with the success that they currently are having?
Yes.
And the other point I want to make has to do with the partnership and we have worked with this charter in order to bring about organizational restructuring and as well as the moving of charters that were authorized by us, but they were set up in other districts. And I think we have worked very collaboratively and cooperatively, and they've been they've adjusted to those requests, I think very well, which speaks to the healthy relationship that we have with our charters. So, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Evans?
Yeah, I'm just curious about one little thing. This looks like a very well-rested group of students. And I was just curious, I know you have a flexible schedule, but how many of your students are required to report at 7:30 in the morning? 7:30. Are any of them required to be there at 7:30?
Our resource centers are open from 7 a.m. and some as late as 7 p.m., so they have the choice, but they're not required, but they are required to come to the resource center twice a week.
Okay. There's not a big crowd at 7:30 in the morning?
There's not a big crowd at 7:30.
I sense a theme in Dr. Evans.
Everything fits together.
Any other board questions or comments?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming out. I think that it was mentioned earlier that initially when, it was a dropout recovery program. So it was the safety net to help kids that just cannot learn very effectively in the current or in the system at the time, to give them other opportunities to learn in different ways, through independent study, through different ways of checking in with educators and things like that. And I think the 24-year track record is phenomenal. And I think it needs to be said that there are a lot more children in San Diego that are graduating from high school because of the work that you've done in the last 24 years. So I want to personally thank you for what you do.
Dr. Whitehurst-Payne.
I would like to commend the student who has really achieved the apex. When you get an award like that, I don't care who you are, if you're working like that, then you're to be commended, and I'd like to commend you for that. And I'd also like to say I thank you for this theme, because I've talked to the superintendent quite a bit about the fact that not all children learn the same way. We're not all the same. We're individuals, and we have unique needs. And so this school provides that safety net for students who want to do things differently. And so I just applaud that, and hopefully we can learn, as you said, from this model.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again. Thank you especially to the students who came out and spoke with us tonight. We thank you for the partnership that you've had with the district for 24 years on behalf of the students of San Diego, and we look forward to your renewal petition coming forward. Thank you, and that concludes the public hearing. Okay, we will now open a public hearing on the initial proposals from CSEA, the Para-Educators Unit. Can we get a motion?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Deidre.
It's an information item.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the board on this item? If not, we will close the public hearing. Okay, item G6, can we get a motion on our proposed revision to our bylaws?
So moved.
Dr. McQuarrie,
Second.
motion, and Vice President Visor, second. And this is, we discussed it in our board governance workshop last week. This is to provide that, non-agenda public comment will begin after our student presentations. And we've got one speaker on this item, citizen.
Are we talking about
G6.
G6? Okay, I couldn't hear because it sounded like thunder when everybody was getting up to leave. This change in the bylaws is not for the benefit of the public that is supposed to be addressing the school board elected officials. To change public comment time is going to make it more difficult for the public. Instead of having a set time of 5 o'clock that people can leave their jobs and come directly here, or know that they're going to be able to make their statements about their concerns, that shouldn't be changed. It's been working that way for a long time. If your desire is to make it more convenient for the children that are performing, then make a set time for those children to perform. Or better yet, reduce the number of times you have children appearing here. It's late at night, they're tired, they have homework to do. Try a holiday student showcase instead for maybe 15 minutes. You have a lot of options. One of the solutions is to follow your policy and to stick to the public agenda, the public comment time that you have. You have rules for that. So to change it just so that you can give out awards or you can have children sing songs, that's not beneficial for the business of the public. That's the reason that we're here, the business of the public and education. And to change it and take away that 5 o'clock start time for public comment hurts the public. For them to have to try and figure out when they're going to come and show up, what are they going to do about their kids at home that need to have a child care because they don't know exactly when they can come and tell their children, well, public comment will be over by 5:30, 5:45, and then I can come back and help you with your homework or tuck you in bed. So this proposed bylaw change is not a good idea, and it shouldn't be approved. I think that you should think about it this time and bring it forward and really consider why you're doing this. This is the public business, and it's for the public to be able to have input to the Board of Education, not for entertainment.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further comment, Dr. Evans?
Yeah, I have some comments.
Yeah.
And I know we discussed it at the governance meeting, but first of all, there will still be plenty of public comment at the meeting. We have many items on the agenda. When people show up to speak on an agenda item, they have no idea what time that item is going to appear on the agenda, and they have to wait through it. And so it doesn't make sense to give special priority just to people who want to speak on an item that is not on the agenda. I also do not believe that the student presentation should be classified as just simply entertainment. It really sets the tone for what we're doing here and remembering what the kids are doing, whether it has to do with music or computers or science or whatever the presentation is. It reminds us of what we're doing. We're not just a bunch of adults sitting around here talking about business. So I think it's in reality, it's a very minor change to allow the students to be here at a time certain, and then we continue on with the business. And we're still actually, even with the change, we're still giving priority to the people who want to speak on items that are not even on the agenda.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Evans. Okay, please vote. Okay. Item H1, this is our guiding principles for financial planning for student success. Superintendent?
Thank you, President Barrera. I'm asking our Chief Business Officer, Greg Ottinger, to join me up here. And these guiding principles are actually, this item is right before the next item where we talk about our district's 16-17 unaudited actuals financial report. And as we move forward to this year and planning for our budget, we want to make sure that we are very clear and ask the board to approve some guiding principles that help us make decisions as we guide the district's financial stewardship as well as the academic outcomes in alignment with our equity goals. And all the CUSIN awards that we just gave are aligned to our LCAP and our Vision 2020. And so when we make tough decisions, we want to make sure that we have a framework for that. So I'll ask Mr. Ottinger to present this, the guiding principles for your consideration and approval.
Thank you, Superintendent Martin. Good evening, members of the board.
Is the mic on?
The button on the bottom.
Aha.
Okay.
So good evening, members of the board. Superintendent Martin. As the superintendent mentioned, the board has demonstrated the ability to look forward, forecast, understand what's coming for years to come, and then make sound decisions. And the collective team across several divisions really work together to put together a framework around the decisions that the board has been making to ensure our mission and vision and goals are met and will be able to be met for years to come, not just the students enrolled today, but for generations to come. And the reason the principles are here for your approval is because there's a significant difference between a principle and, say, a process or a procedure. At the highest level, a principle is what you anchor your decisions to, as to the why I am making certain decisions as a school leader, a department leader, a teacher, a custodian, whatever role you may play in supporting our children. If we have a consistent set of principles, that we can root and anchor all of our decisions to, that's going to be a tremendous help for all of the choices that we are all making collectively across the system. And so for your approval, the teams across several divisions, as I mentioned, have worked together to take the lead from you all and especially understand the decisions you've been making and put them together into something that could be very public, very transparent. And what you'll see is upon your approval, if you so choose, the subsequent presentations which have to do with finance and budget will reflect these principles, again, per your approval. So really, again, looking at, these are the principles in terms of maintaining long-term strategies, disciplined approaches to each financial transaction across the district, making sure that we have all of our transparent processes in place, and it's really putting them together. So with that, all of those would lead to the processes such as perhaps a spending freeze, or perhaps being very judicious with positions before we refill them. Any of those pieces that would come together to make sure we have a long-term solution in mind, those would be the processes that are rooted in these principles. So I want to make sure if we have any questions on these. You want to read it? I'd love to. Would you like me to read the preamble as well? With careful attention to student outcomes and equity, the district has set forth new fiscal and operational models to ensure the organization is financially healthy and situated to serve current and future generations of students while remaining responsible fiscal stewards of taxpayer funds. Therefore, the district has established the following guiding principles to create meaningful learning experiences for all students and maintain long-term fiscal stability. We will ensure each financial decision is rooted in district supports, structures, and capacity development that accomplish Vision 2020 and improve outcomes for students. We will develop, maintain, and communicate long-term strategies that ensure strong fiscal health for the district. We will use a disciplined approach to make financial decisions and hold ourselves accountable for each transaction as it relates to student outcomes and sound economic strategies aligned with Vision 2020. For example, i.e., decisions made with consideration to projected revenue and long-term obligations. We will regularly and openly convey information to the public about fiscal projections, activities, accomplishments, and engage key groups and stakeholders in an input process, i.e. board meetings, LCAP, yearly school site budgeting process, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. We've got one speaker on the item, Lindsay Birmingham. Lindsay, you've got 3 minutes.
Good evening, Board and Superintendent. I'm Lindsay Birmingham, President, San Diego Education Association. As we were reading through the guiding principles, a few of our thoughts on what we read and the process that's happened up until this point. A couple things I want to draw your attention to. One thing that Mr. Ottinger just shared is that these principles will anchor all of the work our district does. This is work that is often done in collaboration with your stakeholders, yet for us, this was the first time we've seen these principles, and I don't know of any other stakeholders that were involved or had the opportunity to provide input on them. Also, he mentioned that we want to be judicious in filling positions. We have many sites right now that are that did not have a smooth opening, that are very understaffed, and we need to ensure that principles and policies that are created aren't so rigid that they prevent us from having the staff we need in place and having the materials we need in place. I know sites were scrambling to order materials, and because of the review process of purchases, struggled to actually have the materials they needed on the first day of school. So just a few closing things. SDEA stands behind strong fiscal control, transparency. We've been talking with many of you about this, not just this past year, but in previous years, but we need to make sure that it's an open and objective process. We need to make sure that these principles aren't going to be used as a tool against making the tough decisions that we need to make in regards to what's in the best interest of our students. And we need to ensure that stakeholder input, goals, and priorities are taken into account. And this can't just be district administration's wish list of what's needed, but ensuring that all stakeholders have a voice in really what's needed to accomplish Vision 2020 and provide the education that all of our students deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. I might suggest, and it's a point well taken that Lindsay's made, I think a set of guiding principles should be vetted with our with the stakeholders in our community, and I think the intention of developing this set of principles is to pull our community together. So we're in broad agreement about the way that we make financial decisions. So I might suggest that we could maybe do a preliminary approval of the principles tonight, but ask the superintendent to go through a process of engaging stakeholders and come back to us at some point in time with any revisions or amendments to the guiding principles that would come about from that level of a dialogue with our stakeholders.
Yeah, so, and I agree with that. I think if we kind of did this as a first reading, and then had the formal approval at the next meeting, that gives kind of 2 weeks for it to be as out there and vetted and talked about. So I think that would be a good idea. If I could, I just want to make some comments. I think we can, if we do that, we'll more formally approve it at the next meeting. But I just want to make some comments on this. I mean, we're always going to advocate for greater funding in education because we know that the level in the state of California is very low. But we're also committed that we're going to live within our means, and we're going to, with whatever amount of money we are given, we are going to accomplish the maximum that we can. And just like the outside groups need to understand this, I think it's really easy to kind of approve some general concepts about, be fiscally responsible and children first and all that kind of stuff, but to really look at exactly what that means so that when a decision is made, we can really look at these principles and see, is it following the principles? My thinking is we should not each year and every year we're facing a fiscal challenge. I mean, that's always been the case and it still will be. But we shouldn't have to go back to the drawing board every time and just start all over. And here's a list of everything we do in the district and let's just go down the list and start going over it. We have our Vision 2020, we have the LCAP process, and that is really, that's what establishes our priorities. And so a lot of the work is already done and we've said this is what's most important, this is what we want to accomplish. Now we just have to figure out how to get the right amounts of money into the different categories. And not just for 1 year. I mean, we made Vision 20, we said this is where we're going. We don't want to every year say, okay, we're going to go down this path and the next year go down another path, because we have a long-term vision. And example of that is with the increased requirements for the class of 2016 for A to G. That was over a period of several years, and we did not veer from that. Sometimes we were more focused on it and sometimes less, but that was a long-term goal and we stuck with it, and we need to do the same thing with all of our academic and financial planning. And I think also another point, and I think this is related to what Lindsay Birmingham was talking about, but we really need to have these conversations with the public exactly what our financial situation is, what are the proposed changes, and what do stakeholders have to say about it. But not just from the stakeholders, not just, no, I don't like that, don't do it, but okay, we have this problem, we're proposing doing it in this way, do you have a more creative way to do it? We have this many dollars for this particular category, is there some other way to work it out rather than just stick with the status quo or make the change? And sometimes there's not a huge amount of time, I mean, in terms of the process of the year of going over every decision, but I think I've learned from last year that we can do a lot better job in terms of having all the stakeholders very fully informed every step along the way about what we're doing, and it's all related to student outcomes, and we all have our favorite little programs or things that we like and so forth, but this is really, and it's part of the responsibility of the superintendent to come up with a plan, is looking at the big picture and deciding what's most important. Obviously, just the stakeholders and also we can kind of go at it and say we don't agree with this particular area, but in doing that we have to come up with some alternative, from the original proposal. So I would just hope that if we take this seriously and if the stakeholders take this seriously, again, we don't go back to the drawing board every year. We just sit down and we say this is what the situation is. Now let's just figure out the details.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, Dr. McCrory.
Yeah, I would agree with the comments made by Lindsay Birmingham and the proposed solution by President Barrera and Dr. Evans. Like the guiding principles, I think they're excellent. However, I think we want to create principles that do not violate the principle. And I think the principle number 4 talks about engaging our stakeholders and key groups in the process. So I'm thinking if we do the two-step process, we will implement these principles as a first example as to how we want to engage our stakeholders and key groups in the development of policy.
Great. Vice President Bowser.
Thank you, President Barrera. I appreciate your guys' reflection on that. I mean, I was going to talk a little bit about the input process to creating these principles, and I'm thrilled that I'm getting the sense that we've got a consensus. But I'm wondering, to what extent can you create a true input process and collaboration with our stakeholders in 2 weeks? So I'm a little bit concerned that while that timeline might be wonderful, because then we could say that we've checked the box, we've got our principles established for the next budget cycle, I think we want to make sure that it's a meaningful process and that the principles that do come as a result of the collaboration is of quality and not just rushed. And then I really appreciate the remarks of Lindsay Birmingham when she said that we want to make sure that this isn't the establishment of some kind of rigid criterion by which we can use it as a tool to defund or unfund other things and other programs that we as a board may feel are also important to education, because the metric is then the 2020 or the LCAP. And the LCAP isn't articulated as a guiding principle, it's articulated as an IE under guiding principle number 4. And so I think the LCAP needs to be one of those main guiding principles, not an example of support of another principle, in my opinion. And then I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to also be fiscally responsible. And that's what I think the real intent of this is. And I wholeheartedly anticipate that I will be supporting having guiding principles, because I think Dr. Evans hit the nail right on the head. Every time we have a budget challenge, which in California is every year, we should not go back to the drawing board and start just hacking away and figuring out where do we find savings and what do we need to save, how do we save class sizes and music like we have this last fiscal year. So I think that after we have a more collaborative process, I think this can be a really important budget tool. Thank you.
Dr. Whitehurst-Payne.
As a board, we've talked repeatedly about having some kind of structure so that we all know going in what our priorities are. Number 1, the students, and keeping everything focused on them. So the idea of having some guiding principles, it's a wonderful idea. But I think that my colleague said it well when he said an item number 4, we have to have some engagement. We can't violate that number 4 by not having that engagement. And I think you're right, 2 weeks is kind of a short time. So we need to look at the best way to try to get this done.
Well, in response to what the two of you said about the time frame, I mean, we don't want to do it too rushed. At the same time, we don't want to drag it out forever, because we want to have this before we start looking at the real numbers. One possibility would be for the superintendent to begin the process and also meeting with the board officers, and if it's ready to go on the 26th, if there's been, there's been input and so forth, and there's agreement that there is, then we could go. And if it's not ready for then we could do it the 2 weeks after that, rather than us kind of arbitrarily saying,
It's 90
this is the
days.
date. Yeah.
When it could be, maybe it could be done in 2 or 4 weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
Superintendent, do you have a thought?
So I just want some clarification that I'm not hearing any disagreement with the actual principles from the board. It's just the process of making sure that we have some stakeholder engagement.
Well, I think you're hearing that the principles are, they sound great, but of course the process for stakeholder engagement might result in some changes or modifications to the principles when they come back. Yeah.
So I will commit to reaching out to, I have regular meetings with union leadership, and I'll begin with that and reach out to the union presidents, and that'll be a process that I will take under myself. Staff has already vetted process and gone through a lengthy process to get to where we are, so that will be something that I'll take on myself.
Okay.
And I know it's a lot of work, but besides the unions, the other stakeholder groups that we deal with in terms of advisory groups and so forth.
Yeah, the parent groups.
Yeah, the parent groups, because they certainly, they have input and speak up, and
sure,
they'll speak up when we're actually doing the actual numbers, so they need to have their input now when we're agreeing about it.
Okay.
The process.
Okay, so we'll take this then as a first reading, and we'll ask the superintendent to go forward with her process of engaging stakeholders and then come back to us at the appropriate time. Thank you. Okay, item H2. This is our unaudited actuals financial report. And Superintendent, do you want to kick this off?
Yes, I'm going to have Mr. Ottinger present this report. This is our annual report, the fiscal year 16-17 unaudited actuals, and our standard account structures and codes that we need to report on a yearly basis.
Good evening again.
Hello.
So I might change the tenor a bit. If I reference the guiding principles, I will reference the proposed guiding principles.
Thank you.
So the spirit of the guiding principles per future vetting. So the presentation is in the spirit of the guiding principles in terms of being very clear with where we ended the year in terms of our actual financials. And as a reminder, this is our unaudited. The audited process will ensue after this. So with that, the purpose here is to brief you on where we are, how we closed the year, and then also the recommendations to the County Office of Education to move this forward per the California Education Code. So a proposed principle would be to develop, maintain, and communicate long-term strategies that ensure strong fiscal health for the district. And the direction that we're moving with this presentation is to start with a little bit higher level perspective, starting with the proposed principle about the long-term health. And as Dr. Lee Evans and the additional members of the board have mentioned, the importance is to really have a dialogue in such meetings as this about what's really happening, what are the financial implications moving forward, what areas are in our control and out of our control, so that it's a very public conversation about what's happening. And so taking that highest level piece, we absolutely understand, and as a district with your leadership, we've made very difficult decisions, but those difficult decisions have been rooted in long-term success. So we're noting, before we jump into the actuals, we're noting publicly here the pension situation, which is something that we are all working through, and it's going to take incredible teamwork as the level of impact to our finances is going to increase each year. And so the chart in front of you and chart to the public just indicates, and we wanted to really share the conversation that between 2013, 2014, and projecting to 2021, that's for the district, $81 million that needs to be accounted for. And you can see those numbers, those charts increase each year. And of course, that's very important. Those are two very important systems to honor our colleagues who have dedicated their life, and that's part of what we all signed up for as public servants within the education system. But we want to just mention that those numbers on the rise, and I really want to appreciate our finance team, because one of the difficult pieces in terms of numbers is sometimes, we have an attached SACS report, which is very lengthy. So if somebody really wants to get into, like our finance team, we've gotten into every single page. Obviously, that's our responsibility. But not everybody has that time, so it's there. So we put together a fairly simple graphic that you've seen before, but a slightly different context. So there's a dollar bill, and the top dollar bill is to show if this year or in 16-17 we have $1, meaning that's our budget. If we project that forward to 2021 and we make a few assumptions, which is always a bad idea, but in this case we'll just play this out, make a few assumptions that everything else is flat. The world is stable, the world markets, the economies, ratings, all those pieces, enrollment, everything else is flat. If nothing else changes, our dollar, we're actually going to be spending $1.05. If nothing else changes, the only variable would be stirs and purs. So right now, what that means for 2021 is if we have $1 now, well, we need to figure out where that extra nickel is coming from. And that's very real, especially when you compound it across a budget our size. So with that, we wanted to really bring in that high-level piece now down to our overview of the unaudited actuals, which, quite simply, we started the year with $123 million. We ended the year with 51.5 in the GFU, or the General Fund Unrestricted. And we're going to walk through, but all of those, that $51.5 million is allocated to known liabilities and obligations. So you'll see our estimated actuals, and our team did a fantastic job estimating. These are large dollar numbers and you have to think about a lot of possible uncertainties. And so it was estimated we would come in around 42.5. We ended with 51.5, which left 8.9. 8.9 to apply to a series of budgets that you see listed there in terms of the non-accruable expenses. And one example of that would be we had a telecommunications bill that we had services in the 16-17 year, but due to some changeovers in networks, it made the billing fairly complicated. So we are literally still working with the telecommunications provider, and this is for the internet for the entire district. So easy to imagine, it's a sizable bill. So we used the services in the prior fiscal year, but because of our transition to another service provider throughout the year, their billing team is still working through, and we're waiting to get those actuals from them. So we know we had a bill last year. We know we have to pay for it. However, we're not getting the bill for it until this year. So that is an example of non-accruable expenses that we needed to bring over. So it may look like we have that additional monies, and that was about $1 million we set aside. It may look like those monies are in the budget, but they are set aside for these known liabilities. And so that's just one example of some of these adjustments, along with the school site carryover, and obviously our revolving cash, which is not petty cash, is revolving cash for smaller ticket items where there does need to be a small amount of cash available. And so that's really the breakdown of where the 8.972 and how we get to a reserve or a surplus of 0, because those are all accounted for with known liabilities. So I want to pause there to see if there are questions on that.
Well, I think it would be helpful to break down that $8.1 million. I mean, I think our starting expectation would be that if our unaudited actuals came, $9 million ahead of what we had projected, that would be helpful as a starting point to dealing with the 18-19 budget. And so if we're saying that some portion of that money is unavailable as a budget solution for 18-19, I think it would be important to break that down so we have further understanding of that.
Of course. Oh, go ahead.
And my question related to what you just said about the telephone or internet. I don't know if any of you have a solar system, but you get the bill on an annual basis, so you're going through every month, and then at the end of the year, you have 12 months accumulated. Are you talking about something like that for the internet service, or because to have a $1 million bill hanging out there and they're not giving you any idea of where the money's like? I mean, it's just kind of.
It's a great question, and that example is unique. That is not standard operating procedure. And the reason that happened was we had a request for information on the AT&T piece that was executed last school year, and that's for a complete, the district bid, and we ended up the best service provider at the lowest cost was a different carrier than we were currently with. And so we transitioned the entire district, so think about your home, but the entire district, all the infrastructure, all the network for every school, both data centers, from one carrier to another. Now, that isn't a switch. It's a matter of, you think about the massive number of connections. And so it was a day by day as construction was completed, because we had to lay, the companies had to lay miles and miles and miles of fiber. And so as Pacific Beach this summer, sorry about that, as Pacific Beach was a bit torn up laying fiber, that meant we could connect a different cluster. And so it got it's very complicated in terms of the billing, which is why as the year progressed, by the time we had to close the fiscal year, the entire bill had not been accounted for because we were still transitioning, if that makes sense. So it's a very unusual year because we shifted literally the district from one carrier to another. However, the $1 million was the element of what's most likely to be a reasonable amount with some conservative nature to it to say, what if it's a little bit over or under? So we are literally working with the carrier to adjust that.
And you just provided that as a specific example,
That's
but
an
the
example.
specific breakdown that President Barrera just asked about, we
Yes.
asked you for tonight to provide us high level.
Of course.
And I think we can provide that breakdown and make sure that we have that.
Great.
Absolutely. So a couple other examples, significant examples would be the additional work and labor involved to make sure that our lead levels are at the appropriate, and we're taking all necessary actions to make sure that we are able to, as a district level, support with, say, Saturday school across the district with staffing and all those elements that come together, custodial services to make Saturday schools happen. Our overall, the enterprise agreement with Microsoft, which has implications for not just the infrastructure with the data centers, but making sure that all users, all students, all staff have the licensing for Microsoft. We don't use disks to install. We have a single license, and that is we've been working on decreasing that every year, but that's about $650,000. Additionally, we had utilities bill. There was a settlement. We were working lawsuit. We were working with all of the different school districts, and we are the lead partner to reduce our utilities. And so we were working with all the different school districts. That lawsuit did not necessarily didn't happen the way that we were hoping, and so that ended up being about a $2 million increase to our utilities as that lawsuit. Some folks didn't quite see it the way for all of the different districts in San Diego County.
So Greg, I think what we're getting at is that if we have $8+ million, we're $8+ million to the better than we had projected in our budget adoption. We recognize that there are certain unanticipated costs that we didn't budget for that we have to pay. We also recognize that over the course of the year, there will be things that we budgeted for that will come in less than we anticipated. There's always, there's puts and takes in the budget process. I think what we want to keep an eye on, and I think this is going to Dr. Whitehurst-Payne's comments, are to the extent that we're making choices where we have an ability to make a choice in terms of how we spend money, this isn't just a free $8 million pot, because when we come down to balancing our 18-19 budget, and we've got, our initial estimate is of $46 million of budget solutions, we know that when we get down to the wire, every dollar is going to matter to us, and $1 million can end up being the difference between, music in the elementary schools or, something very significant. So we've got to be careful, and I think the board has to, certainly weigh in if we make decisions to prioritize certain things that we would spend that money on, because we might spend it now on something like a Microsoft license, and we might want it later, for music in the elementary schools. And so we just have to, be very careful and have a full, discussion, as a board about the way that we deal with good news, which is,
Certainties and uncertainties.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
We thought it would be important to include this. The general fund obviously receives significant attention. However, we did want to highlight the other funding sources, which are not necessarily unrestricted. They are for specific purposes, but we want to be fully transparent that these pieces are here. And although the general fund has the most flexibility, these are absolutely here, and they are a part of the full report as well. So the top recognizes that first piece we talked about. This is the GASB, and this is just an important note to mention. The GASB principles are just to ensure that all government agencies, or especially with regard to our STRS, that this slide is, though it's a series of zeros, the zeros are important because what it's showing is that the district is not hanging on to. We receive $48.252 million on behalf of our contribution from the state to STRS. The total of zero indicates that we are not hanging on to a penny of that. And that's the GASB, that's just the general principles. And again, the external auditors going through these principles and all these elements are part of that. But we thought it was important just to keep this slide here in terms of we are absolutely in compliance with all the recommended government practices. And so in terms of next steps, the external auditors will independently evaluate based on these principles here, and of course the education code, and that will be brought back not by our team, but by the external auditors to the board for their review in December. And so at that point, I wanted to again recommend that we, with your blessing, pass these to the County Office of Education as accepted as our unaudited actuals for the last year. And I want to pause also for questions and also acknowledge this report, though it's simple, making it simple and fairly digestible takes a lot of work, and I really want to appreciate our finance team and human resources and all the different divisions that work together. It's a lot sometimes to make something smaller and a little bit more simple.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Greg, and thank you, finance team. We've got one speaker, Lindsay Birmingham. Lindsay, you've got 3 minutes.
Good evening again. Lindsay Birmingham, President, San Diego Education Association. As once again we're back here addressing the district's budget, I think it's necessary to address the way in which we dealt with the budget last year. We all understand that attempting to determine what funding the district will see from the state is impacted by both state politics as well as speculation. But as we begin to piecemeal what is eventually the final budget, it's important that the actions that we take along the way We understand that they have the greatest impact on both our educators and our students. We're currently dealing with the fact that a multitude of our schools are starting the year understaffed and without the adequate supports they require. An issue that could have been avoided had the district not made the rash decision last year to lay off over 900 educators, thus resulting in the current instability we are facing now. I'm going to take a brief break from what I was going to say to also clear up a couple statements that were made earlier. We have dozens of educators that did not return to the classroom because they couldn't wait any longer to accept a position. They needed a job to care for their family, to care for themselves, to pay their rent. And so many of the vacancies aren't, as the superintendent said, because people left by choice. They left because they had to. We have special education classrooms that are vacant because special education teachers had to go elsewhere in order to get a job because they couldn't wait to find out what was going to happen here. We don't currently have 0 people in layoff status. I believe we have over 100. They are in temporary positions, but that does not mean they are not in laid-off status. They are not recalled until they come back to their original position of either a probationary or a permanent member. So we need to keep that in mind because we have a pool of employees and educators that right now, although they might be in a job, having been somebody in a temporary contract, there's still a lot of unknown. Are you going to be back next year? When will you know? Are you going to have to go through the turmoil you went through this past summer once again? And so as we once again begin dealing with our budget, it's imperative that we look at the components of both our budgets, restricted, unrestricted, and ensure that we're not making decisions that will have a continued destabilizing effect on our classrooms and our students' ability to learn. We need to act cautiously, but we need to act in what's in the best interest of our students.
Thank you. Can we get a motion to accept the report in a second?
Second.
Okay, any further board questions or comments?
Yeah.
John?
Well, first of all, I mean, in terms of the layoff process, one of the things I've asked the superintendent to do is to give us a memo just kind of reiterating what was sort of a postmortem of what was the layoff process, what were the decisions made, and why were things decided at certain points of time, and where did we end up, because it's a very complicated process. But I wanted to comment on this as we start to move forward for the budget for the following year. Obviously, state budgets, our budget, they're really complicated. And one of the things that public and parents, stakeholders, teachers, everybody have a difficulty with is we say this is the number, and then later we say this is the number. Later we say this is the number, and then say, oh, you guys don't know what you're talking about because you keep changing the numbers. But the reality is the numbers keep changing based on new information that we're getting. Now, one thing we did last year was we whittled down the structural deficit almost completely. A little bit left, but most of it was eliminated. So I think at this point, we're really not going to be talking about deficits. We're going to be talking about shortfall. Because we are not operating in a deficit. We balanced our budget last year and the year before and the year before, and we're doing it in this current year. The shortfall is we have, say, $1 million of expenses, or we got $1 million this year, we spent $1 million, and if they gave us the same amount of money the next year, $1 million, we have a shortfall, because guess what? Our pensions just went up, our fuel costs just went up. So when you say even giving the same amount of money is a loss, but we need to find some ways to explain this clear to the public, like this is the current status, this is the shortfall based on what we expect the state funding to be, and in December, this is what in January, this is what we know now, and in April and May and June at different points of time, based on the changes in the state funding. And one of the things too is we can, even with the numbers we're working with, we can overestimate or underestimate. But, for example, we have the $8 million there. We didn't have the option of going $8 million over. If with $1 billion budget, to get it to come out exactly to the penny would first of all be impossible, and it'd also be highly risky if we tried to do that. So that's another thing. But I just think whatever we can do this year to keep people apprised of this is what the current situation is, and this is why we're saying it. We hear all the things about you're mismanaging, you don't know what you're talking about because we just got some new information from the state, or we just had a new unexpected expense like the lead and the water, whatever it is. We just need to keep everybody sort of showing the thermometer how it's going up and down and what we need to do about it. So I just hope we can do that.
Yeah. Vice President Weiser.
Thank you, President Barrera. I want to appreciate you, Mr. Ottinger, and everybody in the Finance Department for your great work over the last fiscal year and putting this together. Just to put it into perspective, with the $1.2 billion budget, $8 million is 0.7% variance. That's incredibly tight. And like Dr. Evans said, it could have been up 8 or down 8 million. And so it's not like there was a huge amount of padding in the budget. And so, right. And so I think that that's a credit to the work in the Finance Department. And I appreciate clarification on the remarks earlier this evening by a couple of folks with regard to the challenges that some of our educators had, and some of the motivations that they may have or had not had in terms of seeking work in other districts and things like that, and that we continue to have a challenge in addressing the teacher shortage. With regard to the 100 teachers in layoff status, I apologize, I was misinformed, and my remarks stand in that those 100 teachers that are in layoff status currently are employed in the classroom, it's my understanding, with the temporary contract. And obviously, we want to try to look into the next year, bringing them back as we experience more attrition. We naturally have attrition every year, and so we're hoping that we can then bring those folks back off those temporary contracts and put them back in the classroom where they belong. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Whitehurst-Payne.
We always talk about the fact that things aren't done in the right way, the right time for children. But then we're also living in the real world, which is the state budget, which is also the factor of these things have to be done in a certain time, even if we don't have the data. So we're constantly making the best guess at that point in time. And factually speaking, we're at this point, and we're grateful for a wonderful, for a year that's opened, that we haven't had a lot of just explosions or anything like that. But the reality is we still have not gotten our report. We're only 2 weeks in. We don't know where our numbers are for students, for our budget. We do not know. And having spent 17 years in HR and understanding how you may have some schools that are up, some schools that are down. In
terms of enrollment.
In terms of enrollment. I mean, that's the reality. Because the bottom line is our monies come from children and from them going to school. And we don't know. Staff have done their best to try to project, to place people where they should be. But the reality is soon we will know those numbers, and it may not play out that we have 10 teachers at this school and may have to have 9 here and 11 there. But it comes down to, do we have the money to allow them to keep 10 teachers when it's only projected for 9? That's the reality that we have to deal with. If the state would give us money so that we can guarantee those 10 teachers stay at that school and we don't have to make any changes, then hey, that's fine, we'll do that. But the reality is it's not going to turn out that way. We're going to have to make some adjustments. Some schools are up, and some are down, and some are level. So we have to just deal with that when we get the data. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. McQuarrie?
Yep. So looking backwards, we've had, take a look at that $1.05 that you were talking about. Looking back and also commenting on enrollment being the driver. ADA drives the revenue. The revenue is dependent upon
how many students we have. And we've lost 1.1, 1.2 students per year. So it's not going to be stable. The trend has been down, and we need to deal with that downward trend, and hopefully we can do that. Looking forward, we've got this $81 million STIRS PERS. And it's not our doing. This is state-mandated costs, and they're not giving us the revenue to pay for that. Unless we change the politics, unless we get in and do whatever we can to require our state that if you're going to require us to pay more for this, give us the money to do it. So we have some drivers that are, we have some trends that are down, and we have one looking and a big hill ahead. So we've got to reverse those.
Okay, great. We've got a motion and a second. I'm sorry, Superintendent, do you want to jump in?
I just wanted to clarify, Dr. Whitehurst-Payne, that we're giving you the daily numbers, and the final reports are in. It's not that we didn't provide that.
No, that wasn't what I meant.
Okay.
It's meant for the general public hearing.
Right, when we get to Third Friday and the drops and the ads, and we're monitoring it actually daily, so knowing where we are there. And then specifically, I wanted to say that 15 people left the district for other teaching positions, and 8 were in special education.
Okay, can we vote? Great, thank you, Greg. Yeah. Good job. Okay, item H3, our resolution in the matter of authorizing issuance of Prop S bonds. Superintendent, this is the first reading.
Yes, I think Mr. Dolgeroff has that. Mr. Dolgeroff will join me up here for this one.
Okay.
You get to switch. Or no, you're doing it together. Yeah, okay.
And I'm sorry, we're hearing items H3 and H4 together, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Good evening again.
Good evening again.
It's been so long. I want to, before we get started, I want to introduce my colleagues who will be working through the lion's share of the presentation. We have Lee Dolgeroff, our Chief of Facilities, Construction, and Planning. And we are very fortunate to have Mr. Mark Young, who's the Managing Director of KNN Public Finance and has been a great steward and supporter and advisor to the district for, is it 24 years? So you started very, very young. So with that, we want to bring forward the details as to the incredible faith that our taxpayers have had in the district and our abilities to leverage these propositions to make incredible improvements to our facilities and ensure that the outside and our physical facilities are keeping in line with the incredible instructional work that's happening to make sure that's an entire package coming together. So with that, as you may remember, we are in buy cycles. We sell bonds in about every other year approach, and we have some excellent news to share with the board and with the public. So just a reminder, and we decided to honor everybody's time, and instead of giving 2 different presentations, although all the board items are separate, for a presentation purpose, we're going to combine Proposition S and Proposition Z, excuse me. And so you may recall that Proposition Z was passed several years ago, and Proposition Z was passed after that. And so really the important pieces that we want to share, and Mr. Young and Mr. Dolgeroff are going to share all of the details. But again, we have an incredible opportunity to leverage these taxpayer dollars. And for transparency, our finance team is listed here for you. We have made sure that we have a robust group of firms that are supporting us to make sure that we have the best pieces in place. And one of the things that we know the public is very interested in, and the board and our leadership, is by us being excellent stewards, and I'm going to refer back to our proposed guiding principles. That is not our fiscal discipline is not just noticed within the district as we make these decisions. They are noticed and noted and appreciated by those who are investing in us in terms of issuing the bonds to us to make sure these pieces happen. And so the fiscal principles, the guiding principles, are very helpful as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Young, who's going to walk through some of these incredible benefits that we've been able to yield due to our high credit ratings over the years, and really how the economic world has seen this board's leadership.
Great, thank you, Greg. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. And again, as Greg said, we do this about every 2 years. I do want to point out that under AB 182, having this workshop and 2 readings of the resolution is a requirement when you issue capital appreciation bonds. I also want to highlight that when AB 182 was first drafted, San Diego Unified's practices of transparency and the board workshops that were done and the public workshops that were done when we went to the voters to ask for approval of bonds, and then subsequently every issuance of bonds, we laid out the plan, we had transparency. San Diego Unified was the model for how to do this. So it's something you've been doing ever since Proposition MM back in '99. So you'll see kind of a consistency in the way that we do the report year over year. I did want to add, at the request of Greg and folks, I did want to add one new slide that you haven't seen before, and that's just some recent developments in the district's credit rating. As you know, back in 2015, the district supported SB 222, which was some technical legislation that effectively allowed the district to go back to at least one of the rating agencies and have them clarify their practice on how they rate the district's bonds. That resulted in a AAA rating from Fitch, the first school district to have that methodology change in the state, and a AA2 upgrade by Moody's. So good news all around. Specifically on the bonds we sold back in 2015, that higher credit rating resulted in over $20 million of interest savings on those bond issues. And that's direct savings both to the taxpayers, but also creating capacity to accelerate the issuance of the bonds and move the bond program up. And that's one of the pieces of good news you're going to hear tonight. The higher ratings we've calculated for the remaining authorization of the program should result in at least another $150 million of interest rate savings. So just a great endeavor. And I think many of you know this, but for that effort and the groundbreaking effort the district went through, in 2016, the district was awarded the Bond Buyer West Coast Deal of the Year and the National Deal of the Year for its efforts. So just a fantastic attaboy for the district. And then recently, we just had another successful sale of the district's annual tax and revenue anticipation note financing. Want to clarify, you've always maintained the highest short-term rating on that program. So just because we got the AAA on the general obligation bonds, it really didn't have an effect on your short-term rating. But we had a couple distinctions this year that I want to highlight. First and foremost, your TRAN sold at the lowest yield of any other TRAN sold this year, a one-year TRAN. So cities, counties, other school districts, you were the lowest yielding, so you were the top of the heap. The other thing I wanted to mention is this, for the first time in 8 years, retail investors. We actually allowed some time for retail investors to come in, and we received almost 100% retail participation in that. I think a combination of that was higher short-term yields, but also an acknowledgement of the difficult decisions the board made last year in structurally balancing the 17-18 budget. With the institutional investors coming in, the total orders for the district's issuance was over $500 million. We had a number of institutional investors who were not participating in other transactions that year. Why did they step up and buy the lowest yielding tran? I think it has a lot to say about the fiscal discipline of the district and the difficult decisions that were made to structurally balance the budget. I loved hearing, in fact, I almost said, let's put that resolution in terms of the defining principles, let's put it on our rating agency presentation, but I've had to belay the order because you're still working through those issues.
It'll get even better.
Yeah. So I just want to, really highlight that the difficult decisions that you've been making are being recognized in the financial markets. And the proof is in the pudding in terms of getting lower interest rates. And at the end of the day, that's savings to your general fund, which allows you to redirect resources to something in the classroom rather than to paying interest to investors. So next issue I want to focus on as part of what you're approving tonight, above and beyond the bond issues, is new memorandums of understanding with the County of San Diego and the school district. Back in 2012, given the unforeseen reductions in assessed valuation, the district had to approve a restructuring of its debt in order to create room to continue issuing Prop S bonds. And when we did that, we adopted an MOU with the county to direct, with the reserves that were created by that restructure, to have a document that directed how those reserves were to be used. When we came back with the Prop Z approval, we executed the same MOU in terms of establishing certain parameters. The three key points of that was to establish a level tax rate. So if you remember, Prop M&S has a combined tax rate of 6670. So we wanted to have that document direct that they levy at that amount. And then for Z, at the $60. For both programs, we establish a tax rate reserve fund to be drawn down in the event that a tax rate increase above our caps was necessary. We could draw down on the reserve and use those dollars in lieu of increasing tax rates. And then, because it's such a large program, and it's so important to be communicating, we established the requirement to have an annual meeting to work together with the county so we could be at the table when they're setting the tax rates. We're looking at the tax rate reserves, and really the district can be doing an audit of, even though they're not district funds, they are district funds in the sense they're voter approved tax rate levies, and they're part of a program that we're really managing, so we should have a seat at the table. So back last summer, the county expressed some concern because the tax rate reserves with the increases in AVs and the like were getting fairly large. And they started the dialogue back in the summer. We were hoping to have the MOUs amended by the end of last calendar year. With Jenny's departure, it put a kind of slowed things down because we needed to get institutional history back at the district in terms of the Candy and others. So we sort of resurrected and accelerated the process, and we now have two new MOUs in front of you for your consideration. They're doing 7 things. They're correcting a typo in one of the MOUs where it had the tax rate levy at 66.67 rather than 6670. It's establishing a cap of the tax rate reserve for MM&S at $50 million and $25 million for Z. And that was an extensive negotiation with the county to get them to agree on that. And we agreed to the higher limit for MM&S because that is the more challenged program. We got them to agree that the tax rate reserve can go out not to a finite period, but to the last fiscal year when we issued bonds. So it's giving us more flexibility. A more formal agenda for annual meetings. So there's now a 7-point plan of minimum items that have to be addressed at each of those meetings. Some language for the lawyers, indemnification, legal, some other sort of ministerial, mechanical issues. But all in all, I think the district got everything we wanted in this MOU. So again, it's a new item that you haven't seen before, but it's so significant in terms of the dollar amounts and the like. We thought it was important to take it to the board for your approval. The county decided that it doesn't need their board approval. It's an administrative item that the auditor and controller can execute. Real quickly, I want to walk through some of the assumptions now that are behind the projections and the structure. 16-17, we saw 5.76 actual growth. We saw 6.4% actual growth. So over the last 3 or 4 years, we've exceeded our projections. As part of our negotiation with the county, in order to get them to agree to our tax rate caps, we had to dial the projections going forward from 5% to 4%. But the good news that we've had over the last 3 or 4 years has mitigated any negative effect of having that going from a 5% in future years down to 4%. We'll have current interest bonds to the extent possible in S. All the Prop Z bonds will be current interest bonds. We'll meet all the requirements for AB 182. The Prop S, maximum tax rate $66.70, dropping to $60 when expires. We're actually going to have a short-term series in S that'll be able to be done as current interest bonds. The balance will be cabs. Z will also have a short-term series as current interest bonds, a long-term series, and we're going to do some more green bonds. So we'll get into more detail on that. And again, the maximum tax rate for that program is $60. We always show you visually, sort of historically, where we've been and where we're going. So you can see here over the years the precipitous drop during the Great Recession, and then you can see we've had a pretty rapid pickup. So we've more than recovered in terms of our assessed valuation. And again, going forward, we're being pretty conservative on our projections at the 4%. A lot of numbers, and actually when we sit down with the county, this is an 11 by 17 page with a lot more columns. But we're just showing you sort of the broad parameters so that you can see the program over its life. So I'll sort of, the first half, I'd say the first 6 columns, that's just the simplified tax rate calculation to determine the revenue that's available to pay the bonds every year. Then we layer in existing debt service on both MM and S, and then that leaves capacity that we can fill in. So this year we're actually, there's some capacity being created in the first 2 years because of some excess tax revenues and some money we had to, when we established those caps, we had extra money, and so we're actually taking out old bonds, which creates capacity for our new bonds. So we'll have a couple years of current interest bonds, and the balance are capital appreciation bonds. And then we show you now the function of that tax rate reserve. So each year, we're starting out now with about 49.3. We'll have some excess dollars. Anything in excess of $50 million will be released, and it'll actually be directed towards paying down debt service in subsequent years. Basically the same approach. It looks a little simpler because all we have is Prop Z bonds. We don't have Prop MM and Prop S bonds, but sort of the same thing. We issue In terms of short-term bonds, we eat up all of our capacity, so we get that $60 levy. And then any amounts in excess in the future of the $25 million tax rate reserve will be drawn down and will be used to pay down bonds in future years, therefore accelerating the ability to issue bonds and shut the program down and pay down bonds early. Again, the next slide is just a graphical depiction. So this is showing the tax rate levy on an annual basis, with the red line being the maximum tax rate in any given year, and then the bars representing the debt service for the current bonds and our new bonds, and showing that in every year, with the exception of 2 years in MM&S, we're below that 6670. And the beauty of Proposition Z and the reason our tax rate reserve is much smaller, we have so much capacity, and it's a much less stressed program, which again is one of the reasons we're going to be giving you some good news tonight. So, the good news. The plan has always been for Prop S to issue $100 million of bonds. We plan on issuing $100 million of bonds. We'll be coming back to you at the next meeting with the formal resolution for that. And the way we structure that, every dollar of par we issue goes into a construction fund. So, and we round to the nearest 5,000. So that's why it's not an even 100 million. And then we show you the balance going to cost of issuance and underwriter's discount. Prop Z, the short-term series, had been projected at about 100 million. It's been moved up to 220 million, and that's by virtue of some of the actions that are being taken in the MOU, some of the increase in assessed valuation, but also a direction from the auditor controller that because of our biannual issuance, the next, not next year, but the year after, we're going to have kind of a stub year where we would be coming to them and saying, we're going to be issuing bonds 2 months from now, and so we want to use that extra tax rate money for that deal. They don't like that, so we've now added a third short maturity to eat up some of that tax money in the 1920 year. So the combination of that is what increased the short-term series. And again, that can be used for technology, FF&E. So to the extent Lee has those needs. But if you don't have that much in technology, it can appropriately be used for long-term infrastructure as well. And then the 500 million, I believe that was increased to the tune of another 100 million over what we were projecting before. So that right now, the breakout of that is 450 for traditional long-term infrastructure and 50 million for green bonds. So relative to the plan that Lee has presented to you previously, really in the last 3 or 4 weeks with negotiations with the county and the like, that this new program this year is increasing by $220 million.
Going to be able to spend all that money, Lee?
We spent an hour on the phone with him and the lawyers to make sure that he's going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So really quickly, I want to highlight on the Prop S deal. I just want to highlight the AB 182 restrictions that are associated with the cabs. We cannot go out longer than 25 years, max interest rate of 8%, have to have a call feature no later than 10 years, a repayment ratio of 4 to 1. Resolution, we need to have a workshop and have it discussed at 2 consecutive board meetings. Additional public disclosure, again, it's nothing more than what you have always been doing, and other additional information. So by the end of the presentation, we will have checked all of the boxes. Just want to point out the proposed debt service schedule for Prop S. So you do have 2 years of current interest bonds. From 28 out to 42, those are cabs. The 42 maximum maturity is less than the 25 years. We have a 10-year call feature, so they'll be callable on July 1 of 2027, so we have a shorter. And the repayment ratio, 1.69.
Wow.
So it's far under the AB 182 restrictions.
Yeah.
And we just like to, even though Z is called current interest bonds and it doesn't have to comply, we do want to point out that the board has said we want Prop Z to be all current interest bonds. So we're proving to you we're doing all current interest bonds. We are putting in a 10-year call feature, and the repayment ratio on the short term is about 1.02. And on the longer term is you would.
1.02.
Yes.
Yeah. That's because it's short term, and you can see the interest rates are the tax exempts are less than 1%. The long term, you would expect it to be higher because we're going out longer, and we're, in this case, selling 30-year bonds. Also, again, this was a requirement. We always did this in terms of our disclosure, but AB 182 has added it. We need to lay out to you all the people who are being paid in terms of the finance team. So we've listed here bond counsel, disclosure counsel. We have to pay for our ratings, fiscal agent. We have to, just various ancillary expenses. I will note travel expense for the district. That is for a trip to New York for when we price $500 million of bonds. I've twisted Greg's arm and said the issuer, when you're selling $500 million of bonds, really needs to be sitting on the desk to make sure the pressure's on to do that. So that's to cover the district. The underwriter's discount is the fee that you pay the underwriters to sell the bonds. This is something that was negotiated through an RFI process, and so we're very sure the district's getting the best rates. You have representatives of each of your senior managers, Citi, Goldman Sachs, and Siebert in the audience, as well as Mary Collins and Ann Raleen from Norton Fulbright, who are your bond counsel and disclosure counsel. And out of full disclosure, as your municipal advisor, I do not get paid out of the proceeds of the bond issue. I'm on a annual retainer contract, so you can be assured anyway, but my advice is not tainted by having the deal size being larger and having me make a larger or other fee. So that's why you won't see a fee for the advisor in there. With that, I believe I'm going to turn it over to Lee to.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mark. Superintendent Martin, members of the board, this bond issuance plan is great news, as you can tell. And I'm here to kind of share with you how our students are going to benefit directly from new and renovated facilities sooner, and then also our taxpayers benefit with reduced borrowing costs, local taxpayers. And you can see those debt to repayment ratios are incredible. I'd like to appreciate Mark and his team, Greg, Debbie, Candy, Gammy's out there, Bernice Gill. Our whole finance team has done a great job supporting our capital bond programs throughout the years. These issuance obviously exceed the project plan that the board had reviewed and approved in February of this year. And so at this time, our recommendation is to accelerate the projects that were approved by the board in accordance with the existing plan that you all had reviewed and approved. So that means, what that really means is that some of the planned projects that we're going to wait until 2019 for the bond issuance that would occur then, and those proceeds in order to award construction contracts, those projects get to start and finish earlier. So that means that our students are going to benefit from improved facilities sooner. Also, we can complete the board-approved plan to air condition all schools without impacting other projects. That's another benefit of this plan. And finally, from a sustainability standpoint, we have this additional revenue sooner will allow us to accelerate another phase of solar and sustainability projects that will improve our and it also align with our climate mitigation adaptation plan. And so in your packet, you'll see that the board had previously approved the projects on attachment 1, and if you look at that what's in the packet, if you look at the projects that are listed in bold, those are projects that we're planning to accelerate in the current board-approved plan. And then there's projects that are shown in green that are going to be funded by the green bond proceeds that Mark had spoke about earlier. And also, you're going to get a chance to review this plan again in November. So shortly after we issue our first bonds on November 7th, Greg and I are going to be back here to present the updated multi-year project plan. So not just the 2017 plan, but also the 2019 and 2021 plan, and moving forward with our semi-annual bond program update. So if you look at the, just starting with Proposition S, we've got revenues that total $100 million in this plan, and so most of the money, $93.4 million, will fund modernization projects, with the remainder funding air conditioning and site discretionary. And then moving on to Proposition Z, that's a $720 million total. The lion's share, again, going to modernization, $346.9 million in modernization, $34 million for building systems repair, air conditioning and joint use fields totaling $170 million. And we're also going to continue our investment with the short maturity bonds, $77 million for upgrading student devices and technology infrastructure that supports the wireless connectivity that our students really connecting our students to the learning applications and content, and also funding furniture, furnishings, equipment, other short useful life procurement. And then moving on to the green bonds, these are going to fund sustainability projects that are aligned with the nearly complete climate mitigation adaptation plan that you'll see later on this year. Just to kind of provide some background, all of our new buildings incorporate the California Collaborative for High Performance School Standards, CHIPS criteria for building energy efficient, cost-effective schools. The CHIPS criteria address indoor environmental quality, energy, water, site, material, waste management. And then also we're complying with the new green building code known as Cal Green. It's the Title 24 stringent California energy building standards. All these projects reduce energy consumption and water consumption, and the building materials are low emitting. And then looking at the photovoltaic projects that we're moving on. So this summer we had launched 8 photovoltaic projects at 8 schools, which will produce, when they're finished and connected to the grid, 4.7 megawatts. And then we've got the second phase is already deep in the planning and design phase at another 10 schools that start in early 2018. And this bond issuance actually allows us to bring on a third phase that will start in late 2018. That's going to be another 4 to 5 megawatts. So if you look at these 3 phases of solar panels at about 30 schools, roughly will produce about 15 million kilowatt hours annually, and potentially offsetting 7,000 tons of CO2 emissions per year.
And we own those systems outright.
And we own those systems.
Yeah, that's correct.
And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Greg. Oh, Mark.
Actually, this is my last slide, and I just wanted to sort of clarify our approach this year to the rating agencies. We're going to return to Moody's and Fitch ratings. We're not going to go back to Kroll, even though they bought into the methodology. They did not assess the tax base as a AAA, and so it really doesn't bring any value to us. We're going to spend the bulk of our time talking to Moody's and explaining to them that the tax rate reserves, the MOU, the relationship with the county. And what we're going to attempt to do is to have Moody's increase our certain scores that they have on a scorecard. We're going to try to have them say, if we got $75 million in the bank with the county that's dedicated to the bonds, you should add that to the unrestricted general fund balance that you're scoring on anyway.
Yeah.
And if you do that, If they just did that, the score we would get would result in a scorecard change to a AA1. We're also going to ask them to give us a better score for the institutional management of the program because of the county-district relationship. The fact that the county's AAA rated and we're so highly rated, we should get a slightly higher score for that. So that's going to be sort of the new information we're going to present, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that county-district relationship because it is so important. Having said that, we are not going to, even though Moody's did not buy into all the hard work that we did, we're going to continue to hit them over the head with the SB 222, the special bankruptcy opinion we have from ORIC, the AB 1200 protections. We're going to, be like a dog with a bone on that and just keep, having them focus on it. Our hope, if it all works out, would be to convince Moody's to upgrade the district one notch. It's anytime you're in the rating category that you're in, that extra notch is exponentially harder. But I think we have a good case. We've got a lot more information and something that works within an existing methodology that they have. And that's kind of a key with these folks. They're in their own box. So last year we were trying to ask them to move out of their box, and we couldn't get them comfortable. So now we're going to play within their box, give them some new information. So that's sort of the approach. But again, all the things that the district has done last year with your budget, and while we won't include it, I think we're going to make reference to the fact that you're considering these financial principles can only help us in this effort. So that's the end of my portion of the presentation. I'll turn it back over to Greg.
And just to close, I want to also thank the folks in the audience that are jumping on planes and have been very gracious to spend time with us. We want to highlight this is significant, and I think the board appreciate a lot of the pride. These significant ratings, and to bring it back to really our purpose. This is a quick timeline, and what we are seeing happen is we have projects that our facilities and construction team are moving and are ready. And I also want to highlight an incredible new piece of our process and system moving forward, which is our new school design team, which is bringing in not just the experts from Lee's team and Drew's team, facilities, but really a tight partnership with chief staff, the area superintendent, secondary, all of the different elements, so that when we're sitting together making decisions about, again, we know there are children that are waiting for these funds. So we're making decisions to ensure our instructional programs are honored by our facilities, and that there's an incredible relationship there. So So we really want to highlight that, and again, quick moving process, and we will keep you updated.
Great, thank you guys. We've got, so we have a first reading on the Prop S issuance, item H3, but we do need a motion on the Prop Z issuance, item H4.
So moved.
Okay, any board discussion or comments?
Just real quick, President Barrera, 3 takeaways for me that I think are phenomenal and speak to the work of your team and our finance department. First of all, that we've saved over $170 million in taxpayer money because of the fiscal leadership of the district and our AAA and AA2 bond ratings through Moody's. The second takeaway I see is that we saved millions of dollars just in our last trans note, $195 million, because we were able to get a 0.86% rate, which is the lowest in the United States of America of any city or municipality. Is that accurate?
California.
California, okay. I'll take it. Lowest in the state of California. And number 3, that we're going to continue, even in the MOU with the typo, we're going to continue the $66.70 tax rate, so we're not really doing anything here to raise taxes. The Prop S, MM, and Z all are maintaining that same property tax level to ensure that our schools are funded. Thank you.
I just
Yeah, Dr.
have one
McCoy.
question. I didn't hear anything about Prop 51. Are we able to leverage any of this money as a matching fund for?
Yes, we've applied for Prop 51 funds, and those applications are working their way through the process, and we expect to receive proceeds. I don't have a good estimate for you yet, but maybe at the November update I'll be able to give you some more good information on that. Anytime that we can go after matching funds from the state or federal government, we do, and so we're seeking to get our local share of those statewide funds.
That's a 1-to-1 match, right?
Yeah, it's a 50-50
Right.
match,
Right.
roughly.
50, right.
I mean, they're grant funds, but roughly 50-50.
Okay, we have a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Evans.
Yeah, we can discuss this more another time, but when we're talking about all these projects and all that we've done with propositions S and Z, I still don't know how much the general public realizes what's been accomplished. I know that you certainly see on your property tax bill, several $100, a couple times a year that, are going specifically for this. And I know that we have a tremendous program in terms of when there's a ribbon cutting and a grand opening and it gets on the news and so forth, but I'm not sure that that's resulted in a complete message about what the district is doing. And so, for example, I'm thinking about, with the community colleges, we get these, full color brochures of all these exciting new buildings and programs and things they're offering. I don't know who that's distributed to, probably just to some of us who are in this kind of position. But I think and I don't know how this works out, but I think we owe something to the taxpayers to show them what has been accomplished. And what's great about this is we wouldn't just be showing buildings.
Right.
We'd be showing academics. We'd be showing students. We'd be showing, results in terms of what's going on. We could also highlight the fiscal and financial responsibility and the high credit rating of the district. I mean, all this kind of stuff.
And the job creation.
Yeah, the job creation, exactly. The effect on the San Diego economy. I mean, even from a self-interest point of view, for people to realize the property value of their homes, which I guess they could raise your property. No, there's limits on raising your property tax. I mean, that they're staying in the same house, and yet their property value is going up because there are better schools in their neighborhood, and I know that parents certainly have some input into this in terms of what they see going on at their own schools or other school literature, but parents are a very small portion of the taxpayers of this district, and they need to see that we're educating kids better, that it improves the local economy, that it's protecting their future Social Security checks. I mean, everything. I mean, and I would like to, I don't know how this is done exactly, but I would like to see something go into the hands of every single taxpayer that shows, maybe a 5-year or a 10-year picture of look at all this has been accomplished, and really get out the message. This is part of our recruiting thing too. The San Diego Unified School District is really a very different district than it was a few years ago. And we paid a lot of money to put all the lists of what we were going to do in a boring black and white presentation in the voter's manual, and hundreds of thousands of dollars. This seems like a really good investment to me. So I don't know what are all of the financial and legal issues of doing that, but I think we should discuss that at some point.
Yeah, I think you make a good point, Dr. Evans, and I'm not sure how we might proceed with your idea. Would we need a motion, or would we just
Well, maybe we could
ask
that we agendize that for a future meeting and consult with the superintendent and Lee Dogeroff and so forth about
So we don't necessarily need to make a motion tonight. We can just, okay,
right.
good.
But that sort of request to the board officers and the superintendent
Yeah.
to follow up on
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Good, okay, vote on H4. Great. Thank you, Mark, yeah.
Guys, good job.
I hope you guys make your planes.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here to the whole team. And thank
Lee, I
you,
think
Mr.
you're
Young.
still up here
Yeah,
for item
you're-
H5.
You're the next item.
That's right. So this is our lease-leaseback measure, so,
I'll move item H5.
okay, we've got a motion, do we have a second? Okay, and do you want to briefly describe?
Sure. So this is a resolution, it's sort of the first step in a best value procurement process. So it's a resolution adopting the qualification and evaluation procedures in accordance with Ed Code Section 17406, known as lease-leaseback. And we've got, in our program, we've got 9 very large, complex school construction projects that are planned that are really benefit from a best value procurement in lieu of a low bid process. The size, the complexity, the critical timelines, the nature of the projects really stand to benefit from this other model. There's no one perfect procurement model. They all have their pros and cons, but in this case, these large projects lend themselves to this. Some of the advantages that this process offers are schedule, quality, cost, funding, and outreach to emerging businesses
Yes.
in underserved communities. So it's something that we can do. And this is this isn't something unique to us. 15 other school districts in our county use this model. 89 other districts in the state use this particular procurement method. There's attached to the item, you see the request for qualifications, which is the first step. What we'll do is do an RFQ, and then we will generate a pool of contractors. So, and this process is the legislation was amended to make it more competitive. So our process is modeled around the amended Ed Code language, so that there's 2 phases of competition. So it's really not just select one contractor. There's a competition to get into a pool of contractors, and then that pool, there's an RFP process that's again competitive with point system and cost being a factor as well. And ultimately, the projects again come back to this board. So this is just this sort of kicks it off, but you'll have a chance to actually review the results of the process, before we award the contracts.
Right, we've got a motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
Yeah.
Yes.
If you could give a really simple explanation of lease-back and it has been in the news in a district or two that there was and I don't remember which ones, that in another part of the state that there was a problem with it, and what that was, why this is not that problem.
Okay, so there's really 3. Yes, why is this not that?
Yes.
So this is not that.
There we go.
Very
It's
sophisticated
important.
explanation.
There have been some, there have been some lawsuits related to this over the years. If you're not executing the process properly, if it doesn't actually utilize the lease process. So really there's 3 primary agreements in every project. You have a pre-construction agreement, so that allows the builder contractor to work with the designer collaboratively and helps develop a good set of plans that are constructible that get through DSA. Then there's a site lease that leases the property to the builder, and then a facilities lease that allows the builder to lease back improvements over time. And typically, the district and the builder decide on a guaranteed maximum price, so the actual cost is also controlled. And you get to work with the builder to ensure that you're working within the realms of your budget on these larger projects. The other thing is it also ensures quality and timely completion of projects. we're going to follow what the law was amended recently to sort of protect the public, to sort of create a little bit more competitive process. So we've been working with our outside counsel and internal legal staff to make sure that we develop a process that fully complies with the new legislation, the way it's supposed to be carried out. But in the past, there have been challenges to this because school district didn't follow the law correctly. Fresno is one example.
That's what I was thinking.
Fresno is the biggest one, and that's what precipitated the change in law, because districts need this. They need a way to procure things other than a low bid. And so if it were really a bad thing, it probably would have been eliminated, but the legislature amended it and kind of fixed it. And now we're actually working with a sort of a newer, better version of the lease-leaseback. So that was there wasn't another local district that there was a challenge because they were working under the parameters of the old law, the old parameters, and the new law had taken effect on January 1. So we're working in a whole new sort of a slightly amended version of lease-leaseback that took effect January 1, 2017.
Okay, thanks.
Right. All right. Okay, please vote. Did you sign up to speak on this?
Oh, we have consent agenda.
I put in a slip.
Did you on this item, H5?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I sure did.
That's all right. Go ahead and speak to it.
Okay, well, I think this is a really poor idea. He's already told you, and Dr. Evans already brought it up, that this has been challenged in court many, many times. And the reason it's been challenged is because it's a bad idea. It has a conflict of interest. Why would you pick a pool of companies for 2 years and then block other companies out for 2 years? Why do you need to do that? Why do you need to have a full-service office within 75 miles? What is that about? In this time of the internet and all the things that you people do and the people that you deal with, 75 miles? That sounds ridiculous to me. You've got to review this very carefully. You're telling him, Lee Dolgroff has come in here so many times and says, we're doing a great job and we're getting these great contractors and everything's going great. And now he comes in with this and he says, no, we got to change it because this is better. And he's telling you, we're going to ensure that we're going to come in budget and we're going to ensure that we get quality. Well, what has he been doing all these years? He's been telling you, we've been coming in under budget, we've been getting good quality schools. He's been telling you that. And now he wants to go with some process that the legislature came up with a law. You know why? Because it was bad. And just because the legislature came up with a law doesn't mean the legislature knows what it's doing. You all know that. There are a lot of lousy laws, and this is one of them. Competition, you have to compete to be a contractor, to bid on a school district. That's what they're already doing. And that's what we pay this guy all this money to do, to evaluate these contractors that are putting in bids and deciding which is the best choice. And he tells you for the last several years that he's been doing a great job doing it. And so now he wants to go and lease our land to somebody for $1, and then we get our property back as we do this and that. Sounds like a lot of flim-flam nonsense. It's a lot of flim-flam nonsense. And for the 5 of you to go along with this, go along with Dr. Evans. He asked a couple of good questions. Don't approve this tonight because you guys don't understand it. And he understands it, and he knows it's a flim-flam thing. What this does, it creates a nice, cozy relationship for the selected few with this school district. That's how Monarch snuck into Scripps Ranch, right?
Okay, thank you. Please vote. Oh, we did. Okay. Okay, we've got 4 items from the consent agenda, 38, 40, 64, and 65.
I'll move item 38, 40, 64, and 65.
Thank you, Mr. Delgroff.
Okay, so we've got Lindsay Birmingham, who's signed up to speak on item I-38, 64, and 65. Go ahead, Lindsay.
I'll second the motion.
Lindsay Birmingham, SDA President. Hopefully I won't need 3 minutes. We all want to go home. First one I wanted to speak on was 38. This is in addressing continuation of a relationship with VALIC. I this summer went to a CTA conference on member benefits, and one of the things that CTA has developed is a member supplemental retirement benefit plan, a 403B or a 457B, and it's a plan that they have thoroughly vetted, low fees, what's in the best interest of our members of educators in California who put additional money into their own retirement system. We've been working to try to get it here in San Diego Unified, and I was this summer told by CTA that they can't offer it here because of VALIC being your third-party administrator and the concerns they have with VALIC's practices and whatnot. And so what I'm asking is, if at all possible, to put a hold on this so that I can get the information from CTA for you guys as to what the concerns are with VALIC, to see if we can address it with them and or find a different provider so that we can provide the best program to our members. So that's on that one. The other ones I just wanted to draw your attention to, I talked to Jim this afternoon in regards to the two 64 and 65 and shared my concerns with him, but I thought it was important to share it with all of you. These two items, and I wish I had pulled a few more, just these two items equate to $100,000 going to outside consultants for professional development when we have, I believe, highly trained experts already employed by our district. And when we're sitting at the bargaining table and we're having conversations and we hear from you that you don't have money for lower class sizes and you don't have money for extra resources for restorative justice, to see $100,000 going out the door to outside consultants is too hard for us to sit here and be quiet. I know based on my conversation with Jim, he believes these are great programs providing great PD for our educators. I trust that he believes that, but I also believe that the money sent to our district to educate our students needs to stay within our district. You also already approved, I missed it in going through the agenda, $100,000 additional legal contract with an outside firm. Again, we have a large legal department within our district, and we need to ensure that the money for our students is staying in our district and not going out to all of these other firms. Thanks.
Thank you. And citizens speaking to item I-40.
Again, I'm going to talk about field trips, and that children are still being charged to go on field trips. That's something that the school district should have funded, and it says on these papers that no child will be excluded, but that's not what you're telling the kids. You're telling the kids, if you don't pay for these field trips, you don't get to go, and that's not the right way to do it. And the other one is I-40, and I'm very disappointed to see that it says savings and CD investment accounts of ASB are only reported in September. Well, this is September, and I expected to see a list of the schools, and I want to monitor if those $100,000 CDs that were sitting there for 10 years have been used. That money shouldn't be sitting in a bank account when our students should be benefiting from those funds. And there are always several. Now, I know a couple that have been spent down, but those documents weren't produced now, and I expected to see them. So they should be produced so we can be transparent. It's not right for a school to hide the CDs, the certificates of deposits that the ASB at the high schools have in the ASB, and that money's never spent because the children are never told they have that money available. It just keeps rolling over and over again every year, and that's not right.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on, I think, 38.
I have a question
I'd like to
on 38, which, I'm sorry, which was, I mean, what Lindsay Birmingham brought up. Is there any?
Can I have staff answer?
Is there any time pressure on doing
Debbie
this?
Foster can come up and talk about the implications of delaying that, although I understand what Ms. Birmingham just said, but Debbie's prepared to give you just some background on that.
We appreciate, thank you, Lindsay, for that.
information. This is a ratification, so it's something already in place, and it's an attachment to, it's a free service they provide in addition to a planned service we already have. So what we'd like to propose is that we approve this because it's a ratification, maybe work with Lindsay to see if there's another option there, and then we could bring back a modification at the board if needed.
Okay.
Does that work?
That work?
Okay, so you still
Yeah.
consult with them about it?
We'll
Okay.
So if there's
circle back
another
with-
option out there that's better, we're open to that.
Yeah, because this involves our employees, and then obviously
Yep.
she has a handle on that.
Is she here?
Yeah, she's right there.
My glasses.
Oh.
My only concern would be in reading it, it's a 2-year contract through the end of 2019, so would that prohibit us from being able to offer this plan if we're still valid for another 2 years? That's our concern and why we brought it up.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion to, on 38.
But
what did you want to
what's your
respond to?
And I was just going to say, and I'm looking at Drew to confirm, and I believe in all of our contracts, we have a 30-day termination.
Yes.
It's a-
We just have to go forward with the ratification of it, but there's a 30-day out clause.
Out clause, thank you.
30-day out? Okay.
If we come up
Yes,
with
on page 7.
Okay, so Vice President Beiser has withdrawn the motion on I-38. Does somebody want to make a motion on I-38?
I will move for item 38 as long as, once we ratify it, that there's consultation during this 30-day period to see if we need to cancel it.
Do we have a second?
I will second with those considerations, that we have consultation and that we can utilize the options if necessary.
Okay. Any
Reach an
further
agreement.
comments on I-38? If not, please vote. Okay, and then we had a motion that covered 40, 64, and 65, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have and we had a second? Yes. Okay, please vote. Okay, do you have any remaining non-agenda public testimony? Julie Dennis and Karen Calderon. You have 3 minutes each. Hi.
Hi, I'm
Thank you
Julie
for
Dennis.
waiting.
What was that?
Thank you for sticking around.
Yeah. I'm Julie Dennis. I'm a mother of 3 kids, 2 of which are at Curie. The other one is in preschool. I have about 14 more years in the school district left as of now. I initially came to talk about the music program at Curie and what has happened to it compared to the other schools in our cluster and the other schools which we all, as Kendra mentioned earlier, we feed into the same middle school, which puts our students at a clear detriment to what's happening. But after hearing everything that has gone on, talking about the budget and everything like that, I really am distraught over the state of things, because all I hear is, hey, we did a great job last year. On the ground, that is not what it looks like. What it looks like is last year we fought tooth and nail to get librarians, and that got cut. We have 1 librarian, 1 day a week. We fought for art. We have no art. Our PTA pays for art. Our PTA pays for PE. Our PTA now apparently is going to hopefully pay for some of the librarian. And now we are also adding a 4th grade choral that we are going to fund because the district is no longer funding it. I hear lots of pats on the back, but we are not feeling it. What we are feeling at is what we say to ourselves, well, 5th grade is better, 5th grade music choral is better than nothing. That is not the education that I want for my children. When I went to Alcott Elementary School 30 years ago, I had instrumental music. This is not the same district as it was 5 years ago, but it is not a better district. Things are going wrong for the real kids, for the real parents. It is not working the way it appears to be working here. We still are understaffed in our office. We have 1 secretary for 600 plus students. I see all of these positive things that are happening according to your numbers. all we see is things taken away. It is not working. Something needs to be changed. And I thank you for that time. I do look forward to meetings that we have hopefully scheduled with Lamont and perhaps Dr. Evans as well to rectify the music situation that hopefully will be done by the end of this week. We hired, instead of keeping it in-house, we hired an out-of-state choral music teacher to come in to teach at our school. And that won't start for another 2 to 3 weeks. All of the music teachers here in California, in San Diego, some that we accessed last year, and we hired an out-of-state choral music teacher. The other elementary schools have 3 teachers at each school. We are going to get 1 for choral music for 1 grade. And it is unacceptable to be proud of that. For the emails to come and say, hey, we're so excited, you get to keep music at 1/3 of the level as what we had before. It is unacceptable.
Thanks.
Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Karen Calderon, and I have a 5th grade student at Curie Elementary, and I have a 7th grader at Stanley Middle School, and who went through Curie as well. I want to reiterate what Julie said after sitting through this meeting. We came here to speak about instrumental music and the loss that we had. When we were told last year that we were going to lose it, at that point in time, our parents immediately started reaching out to the district to see how we could keep our program. And that program rolls into Stanley Music. And at that point in time, Mr. Marcus, who had been there for decades, had an award-winning program. Unfortunately, he is retired. Now there's someone new in place. I don't think quite understands what's going to happen, but if you don't teach instrumental music in 5th grade, you have students walk into 6th grade who have no experience. How then do you have a band? You are then starting from scratch. If the intent is to have 6th grade be beginning band, then say that. Say, we are going to do 6th grade beginning band and beginning orchestra. Because as parents now, we're wondering what is going to happen. I have a 4th grader who's rolling into 5th grade, was looking to continue the viola. Our finances are stretched as they are, and I don't know if we can afford to send them outside of class, as other parents have said. And as Julie would say, and I'd like to reiterate, what you see and are congratulating yourselves on board, what we are seeing is the opposite of that. We are seeing the fact that we were told we got our air conditioning, which is fabulous. Before it was installed, I said, how is the district going to pay for that? Because I know as a person who has air conditioning in my own home, my budget adjusts during the summer and fall to pay for it. And everyone just raised their hands and said, I don't know. And I said, well, I assume solar will be installed at that same point in time to help make up for that difference in cost. Nope, that never happened. We love the AC, but we now see that the district has no way to pay for it. That is, as they install more of these, it was never thought long-term what's going to happen with those bills. Additionally, we were told we were going to get an artificial turf field. We then raised our hands and said, no, 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 no. We have heard that this is causing problems and cancer and all sorts of things. So we approached over and over, can we pay for the difference to put in sand? We were told we couldn't do that because then the district would be admitting that there's a problem with the artificial turf if we were allowed to pay the difference to put in something that parents and neighbors thought were healthy. So what I am asking you and imploring you, as a homeowner myself, my husband and I have already discussed, we are not voting on any more prop money because we don't feel it is being effectively spent, and we are vocal with our neighbors about doing the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are adjourned.
Thank you.